And that's what frustrates me as someone who's been in the scene for a long time. Why I'm freaking piecing out, because I'm like screaming at the top of my lungs, like, guys, we've got to tackle the reality, and we can't just be so worried about if it gives a point to another group. Like, if I was an anti-Mormon podcaster through and through, and my goal was to destroy the church, okay? And I knew there was a Nazi movement going, and I'm like, this mommy blogger got a boob job. Let's talk about that. Like, hey.
That's what I'm trying to say. Is like, it's
absolutely,
it's deeper.
No, 100% agree with what you're saying. And that's why I'm saying, what if the text isn't saying that? And what if people have been reading it wrong? I'm saying Marky Peterson was wrong. I'm saying Brigham Young was wrong. And unfortunately, the Mormon podcasts aren't doing it. I love so many of those guys behind the mics. I think so many of those channels are, I'm great friends with them. They're great people. Very few are willing to touch this subject because it means they have to confront uncomfortable truths about Brigham Young that they don't want to say. It means they have to confront uncomfortable truths about church history that they don't want to acknowledge or they wanted to put in a more positive light. And it means a level of deconstruction that people aren't comfortable with and that their audience isn't comfortable with.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Carah Burrell. I host this podcast here called The Mormon History Hoedown. Sometimes I go by Nuance Ho. Today in my studio, I have invited in the one and only Kwaku L. Welcome.
Hello.
So Kwaku L, you might know from, Ward Radio, formerly known as Midnight Mormons, Jubilee, Mormons versus exMormons. Tell people some other things they might have seen
I
you
was
in.
on Saints Unscripted, Stone 16. So I've been on.
So people know you as pretty much stuff. A Mormon apologist, a defender of the faith, a person who says controversial things sometimes, somebody who is out there in the public eye for many, many years saying things.
I feel like I'm not quite an apologist, though. I feel like I'm just, I don't know. I don't know if there's a good term.
We'll just say that a lot of my audience as exMormons would say, ew, Kwaku, why is he there? And a lot of your audience would say, ew, why are you talking to Carah?
That is true.
But overall, I think you and I are both kind of nuanced people more than other people would assume we are, and where there's just kind of a different frequency where it's like, okay, I see where you're coming from. You might see where I'm coming from. We both have comedy backgrounds a little bit, so we just I feel have like a discussion.
People, because the LDS online spaces and groups, I feel like whatever group someone puts you in, you're responsible for everything people say in that group, right? Where it's like, I did a video about reincarnation. Right. I put it on YouTube saying, hey, I believe in reincarnation. That's not a normal LDS apologist thing. Or like in the debate with where, we wore the bulletproof vests. Remember that? I said that I think there's going to be gay marriage in heaven. That's also not a normal apologist thing. So I feel like I actually have different opinions than people think, but people don't. They just assume I think something else. And so I haven't really done apologetics for years. I kind of just go on shows and crack jokes and leave. That's kind of what I've done recently.
That's why we're talking about something real this time. Yes. And things have evolved. You're not the same young whippersnapper you were probably when I first saw you. When did you first come on the scene?
I was like 17. Like I was literally a freaking kid the first time I was doing videos. So it's like, someone's like, do you remember this time you said this? No. And then they'll pull the video and I'm like, I think exMormons look like Bin Laden. You're like, wow, I can't believe I said that. I did say something like crazy.
Yeah, so you've said some crazy things.
Yeah.
And also, I just wanted to add, when I was researching for this video a little bit, I noticed that you tweeted that you said something along the lines of, like 90% of the stuff that I say, I'm actually trolling when I get in front of a mic. So that's kind of a good way to start the podcast. To be I
do lean into the meme. I do lean into the meme. I feel like you have to. Like, I feel like if you don't lean into the meme, like you're going to get killed either way, so you may as well like lean into it and have people wonder, like, does he mean it or not, and then like enjoy the ambiguity, because we're all gonna die one day, so you may as well have fun with the ambiguity.
Be reincarnated, possibly.
I for sure feel like that. Like I really feel like we've all been. You're telling me you've never like just been like laying down and just started like just thinking like, who was I before?
Yeah, my sad little ex-Mormon atheist beliefs have evolved, but we're not talking about that today. But I see where you're coming from.
I really think it's
see
real.
where you're coming from. That's nice that you're so like facetious with your stuff, but then you also take it back a little bit. So now, when we're talking about a literal Nazi movement,
we can't make jokes because this is actually real.
This is like, we're getting it through that you and I kind of like to joke around a little bit, but there's also something serious afoot that we need to be taking seriously. So we've already done a 3-hour discussion like a year and a half ago. And I think a lot of people were frustrated with that discussion because, like you said, you're not a typical like an apologist, where the ways in which you were describing the church or defending the church or describing your interactions with it, all I could say to it was, that's just not the Mormonism a lot of people experience.
Right.
The ways that you're talking about it is not how I was raised, how the majority of my ex-Mormon audience was raised, how people view Mormonism. So I think it was a really interesting discussion. But today we're kind of coming together to talk about the DezNat movement and what has been going on with this bunch of incels over there on X/Twitter, and a lot to discuss.
Well, so about the past 2.5 years, my whole X account has really been dedicated to like countering DezNat stuff. So it used to be I kind of just posted like scriptures or jokes or whatever, but the whole LDS Twitter sphere has been taken over by Nazis, and it's really weird and jarring because no other Christian denomination is really struggling with this, right? Jehovah's Witnesses don't have a Nazi movement, I mean, you kind of have the weird trad Cath movement with like the Nick Fuentes types. Mm-hmm. Catholics do have that. But there's no Methodist Nazis, there's no like, it's really weird that we have this. So, I mean, we can go back to the beginning of how it all started. Mm-hmm. We can like
familiarize people with what the heck DezNat even is. And for the audio listeners out there, I'm white, Kwaku. I hear you're black. Is that?
I'm definitely not Korean. No, I'm black. Yes.
So that also kind of plays
Arab
into.
As well.
You said you're part Arab?
Yeah.
Okay. So that kind of also plays into the discussion we're having when we're talking about Nazis.
Yes.
People who are listening that might not know.
One of the biggest targets of DezNat. There's not a day where there's not like a new thread on X about me by the DezNat counts. The Charleston Unite the Right rally. Remember that in like 2016 or 2017?
Unite the Right. I was still a conservative at that time. So I was Unite the Right. Oh, shit.
It was, you're like,
mind.
We're finally going to attack the left. And then you're like, why are they goose stepping? And you're like, oh, these aren't my people.
Yeah. So as we get into that, is it okay if I read the slides? I'm just going to bullet point as well as just some pictures of memes so you can familiarize yourself. And then we're going to just take off and talk about this. So DezNat stands for Deseret Nation, rooted in a romanticized idea of a Mormon theocracy. It emerged around 2015 on Twitter, partially inspired by prepper groups, conservative Mormon ideals, and internet culture. The group evolved from online trolling into meme warfare with escalating violent undertones. DezNat grew out of internet forums like Zion's Camp, originally a gun enthusiast Mormon group. Members viewed themselves as defenders of true, quote-unquote, Mormonism, often in opposition to mainstream LDS positions. And then the meme that I put on stage or on screen is Brigham Young did nothing wrong, which is a common mantra of theirs. DezNat blends Mormon fundamentalism, American far-right nationalism, and online troll culture. Its culture is steeped in violent rhetoric, including memes referencing blood atonement and threats to apostates. The White Horse Prophecy, which I want to talk to you more about as well. The White Horse Prophecy plays a major role. Because I'm like, where the hell are you guys right now? White Horse Prophecy. Oh no, you're on that side. Shit. Constitution, hanging by a thread. Anyway, the White Horse Prophecy plays a major role painting DezNat members as saviors of the Constitution. Many DezNat followers idolize Brigham Young and early Mormon militancy. Captain Moroni is frequently used as a symbol of justified violence for righteous causes. And I put a meme on screen here, and it's a Pepe the Frog and kind of a militarized looking thing from the DezNat flag. And it says, just heard it's time to activate phase 3. They're like standing by. So it's just Pepe ready to militarize on behalf of Christ, I guess. And this one has a meme, the famous one of like they view themselves as like protectors of the family. So it's like an umbrella over a family. It says Book of Mormon, and it's like the rainbow flag saving them from Islam. And BLM and higher education and LGBTQ and communism, allegedly. And sometimes they'll put up emojis of umbrellas next to their names so that you know that they're like, it's a safe space around them. So DezNat interprets the church's silence as approval, since no leaders, bishops, stake presidents, or general authorities have called them out. The assumption is we must basically be on the right track. DezNat frames themselves as unofficial enforcers, like the Danites of early church history, doing the dirty work the church couldn't officially do in public. That's an important point. This is particularly dangerous in combination with rhetoric about the world being in moral decay or the church being under attack from within. Some explicitly believe they were chosen to play a militant role in the defense of the gospel and the Constitution. Another great meme I showed Kwaku earlier of an AI-generated people of a Mormon family and the woman with like gigantic bajangas, and they're standing in front of the temple and the guy is holding it, and it's going to lead into another discussion we're having. This is what the left took
from you. This is what this is all the gospel's about, okay? Mm-hmm. And this is what they took from you. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's really like the ethos of their whole thing. Like, if it weren't for the left, I wouldn't be an incel. Mm-hmm. I would have a hot blonde Swedish model wife with,
and now I have to AI it.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's craziness.
Exactly. DezNat contents portray white Mormon families being protected from minorities and marginalized communities. Kwaku.
That is me.
Memes regularly mock or threaten LGBTQ plus people, feminists, Black people, Muslims, and exMormons. That's me. There's a history in LDS doctrine of white supremacy, like the priesthood ban, that DezNat members reframe as doctrinal truth. Many DezNat users don't identify as white supremacists. They claim they're just following the gospel. That's a good point I think we're going to get into.
Yeah.
And then I love this one. This is a picture of the guy from DezNat with his shirt off. Famous one with him holding a knife up to the camera. And he says, me when I see John Dolan start complaining about Fair Mormon's new videos. So yeah, also people know you from Tits from This Is the Show. So people know you from.
They do.
Speaking of tits, in the other picture, I just remembered that one.
Those are two different kinds. Okay, one was our tits were not AI. That was us in front of the camera. Those are Goombas being put onto a person.
Yeah. A lot of inside jokes in the Mormon exMormon. Isn't it fun we can do this? Because I loved those videos. I loved them so much. Just shame they got taken down. Darn it.
I kind of wish they were still up. Here's the thing. That was like such a sorry, not to interrupt
Go for it.
But this is the show, like, you know, certain things you just had to be there for to understand it. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where, like, in 30 years, when this is all old school Mormon internet and there's a bunch of new people doing stuff, no one's going to understand it. They're going to be like, yeah, there was this thing called tits. Like, what? It was about the CS
a Mormon
letter.
apologetics channel.
What?
And Nuance Ho had some of her best riffs on it. Her best work.
But here's what I'm proud of about it. It had never been done before. Nothing like it. Like, nobody had ever done like sketch comedy, apologetic, religious. It's never.
And I can't wait for somebody to do it.
They couldn't.
Better.
No, they couldn't. Someone's gonna try, and it won't. It was during COVID, so like people were forced to watch it because they couldn't go out. It's just like everything
you're not
was
getting
like
a ringing endorsement. It'd never been done, and they were forced to watch it. Quickly, I'm moving on. You're speaking to a comment section of exMormons right now, being like,
okay, but the show wasn't like that bad, you know?
Yeah. I'm moving on. Symbolism like Bowie knives, fascist axes, Moroni with guns, apostates get the knife memes, all show militarized belief. Porter Rockwell is a common hero for DezNat, seen as the embodiment of righteous violence. Memes and posts celebrating withdrawing heads from necks instead of just excommunication. There's a growing concern about online radicalization feeding into real-world violence or terrorism. DezNat members have harassed exMormons, LGBTQ plus people, and progressive Mormons online. Doxing and threats are not uncommon. And then on screen, I should have a few more memes of apostate, a bandana, and the hat, and the guy's really cool. It's so cool. It's really a cool thing.
really.
Yeah. And then, is it called an N tower?
Yes.
That one.
There have been many N towers directed at me. Many.
That sucks.
Many.
So that's just an example on the left is, can't believe Nim got hit by a car and died. Press F in the chat, boys. Might need to leave Twitter for a bit. And it's what he would want. And then everyone spells out the N-word because they can and they do. Everything on screen I don't even want to read, but it's just sad. And then Jim Bennett, how would you describe Jim Bennett? He's done Mormon apologetics. Yeah. Where Jim Bennett posted, who is more effective at driving people out of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Former church members, 18%. That'd be like me. DezNat types, 82%. And so when we first came in, Kwaku was like, why are more exMormons not talking about this? This is everything. We have our own freaking Nazi movement within the church. This is why I'm glad we're having this discussion today, because we're going to start at the beginning of
Hannah Stoddard, who I like Hannah Stoddard, but even she echoes some of these talking points in her stuff, right? With the Joseph Smith Foundation. I'm sorry. We're
getting off topic.
You know, here. Alex Jones and Joe Rogan. How Alex goes. I feel like that's me right now. There's so many things I can see. You have to rein me in, or else I'm going to sound like a schizo.
Okay. So, where do you want to start first?
Well, I kind of give the timeline. Okay. Right. So, the Unite the Right rally, that was when this movement started peaking. Not peaking. That's when people started paying attention. So the first hashtag that was going around was Deseret nationalism. There was a woman online named Ayla Stewart, and her whole profile was called Wife with a Purpose, at a purposeful wife. She had like 160,000 followers in 2016 and 2017. And she was like a homesteader, like organic food, love your children. You're like, okay, well, nothing wrong with that. She's like, and you know what? Faith in Jesus is good. You're like, okay, it sounds like a kind of like a mom in Kentucky. No issue with this. And then she would post pictures like this is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm a member of this church, but I'm worried about darkness coming into our church, pornography, drug abuse, Black people. And you're like, hey, that last one shouldn't be on this list of the other.
She would literally say Black people? Or she was
there was a picture she posted of there was a music video with the guy at the time. It was James the Mormon, the rapper, and like his crew, and she posted a screenshot of the music video of them singing, and because it was 3 Black people in, and posted it talking about how horribly the church has fallen, and all it was just a picture of 3 Black people, and comments are like, hey, what's wrong with this? And the comment was like, this is disgusting. And you're like, oh no. Oh, okay. So then she gets invited to speak at the Unite the Right rally, and she goes full gloves off. She's like, look, the problem right now in church culture is we have all of this evil race mixing going on. You have all of these gay people just bringing their evil rainbow jihad into the church. And that's a real term they would use, by the way, rainbow jihad.
Yeah.
And we have to fight against it. So I'm going to speak at this Unite the Right rally. While she was doing this, a person she would retweet a lot was a guy with the username J. Reuben Clark, after the church apostle J. Reuben Clark. And J. Reuben Clark would retweet like anti-Semitic stuff, about Jewish banker conspiracy, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So at the Unite the Right rally, there was the massacre there. The church releases its first ever statement where the church says, we are against racism. This is wrong. We don't want to be a part of any kind of movement like this. And she quotes the statement and puts it on Twitter and says, see, the church is on my side. The church is against all of this anti-white hatred too. This is why she says this whole thing, okay? Mm-hmm. The church releases another statement the same day, that night, saying, we are not at all in favor of creating a white culture or a white ethno-state. Now, this is a statement from the actual church, from the church newsroom. It's never nothing like that's ever happened in church history before. But this woman was getting so much attention, the church was like, yeah, we can't have this 160,000 follower big account posting pro-Nazi stuff in the name of the church. So she gets really upset. She leaves the church. But the Deseret nationalism hashtag that she was popularizing got shortened to DezNat, and people started pushing it. One of the guy I mentioned, J. Reuben Clark, that guy. That guy was the Assistant Attorney General of Alaska. He was one of the facilitators of these big group chats that would have all the DezNat people in, and they're reposting all this stuff, and they're reposting they did it in a very tactful way, which it really isn't tactful, but to them it was, where someone would say something like post like a picture at BLM, right? Or really they would post a picture of like a city with fire, and they would say hashtag BLM. And it could be like, it's like some city in Serbia, and they're just pretending it's like Baltimore or something, right? And say BLM, we can't let this into the church. And then they'd repost it and be like, Brigham Young did nothing wrong. And you get what they're saying. You can read in between the lines. Yeah. If you're some journalist from Seattle who knows nothing about the church, you're like, well, I don't, you don't understand the coded message, right? So I would see the coded message. But no one knew who this guy was at the time, but he was the Assistant Attorney General of Alaska. Not a great position to be in if you are a Nazi, right? If you have these pernicious beliefs. And so they're reposting stuff about how, race mixing is wrong, posting pictures of, and the DezNat's doing this, posting pictures of like mixed race kids, calling it an abomination, all sorts of stuff like that, right? And not like this is right before AI. So they're going and finding real pictures of mixed race children in the church off of like ward members' Facebook pages and stuff, putting it on X and calling it an abomination. So this hashtag starts growing and growing and growing, and they have these group chats on Discord and stuff, and they're talking about how they can save the church from Marxism, leftism, LGBT,
everything in that rainbow.
Yeah, anything that's not straight white Christian conservatism. Now, most people would go, okay, well, that's just nonsense. No reasonable people aren't going to follow it. That's probably 5 guys. Well, that's what you would hope. But the direction our country took with Trumpism 2.0, especially, a lot more of these people, these lonely young men who felt that everything was taken from them, have gone into this movement. So now we have thousands of people in the church that are in these group chats. And they have their memes, and you can tell their memery by, you can tell their association by the memes. So, for example, the kind of like the retro, like the vapor retro wave with like a Melchizedek priesthood, like a Melchizedek star. The vapor retro wave with like Joseph Smith or Brigham Young, with the remember what they took from you. They'll use AI and have Joseph Smith like holding up an AR-15, right? All this kind of stuff. So the movement's growing, and the core tenets of the belief is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is innately a white Christian, white supremacist movement and ideology. If you want to have brown people part of the church, that's fine, but they have to know their place. That's kind of their thought. And they want to create a culture. Well, they're pushing for a cultural purge in which anybody who doesn't meet the criteria to be a member of the church is pushed away and pushed out. So they want to create a cultural purge in that if you are, if you're a black member of the church, or you're an African convert, is at BYU, their goal is to create a culture in which you are harassed, bullied, mocked at church, so you don't want to come back, right? That's the goal.
Otherwise, so just to clarify, there is this idea about race mixing or like desegregation that could happen in the Jim Crow South that's happening within the church today. When you're saying she makes it sound like if there are minorities in the church, that is making the church dirtier. Is that overall? Yes. So that's kind of what I always would assume when I read between the lines when I see what DezNat is talking about. But you're saying that is now more their explicit intention.
Absolutely. Extremely explicit. And we know this because DezNat exposed the Twitter account. Lord knows how they did it, but they figured out who a lot of these secret accounts were, and they leaked the info. And they said, look, and you know, I think there's a level in which, yeah, if you have a private account or a secret or a burner account, there's a level in which you do deserve privacy. But when you're using that burner account to attack the lives of other people, especially based on immutable characteristics like race or sexuality or gender identity, then it's like, hey, you don't deserve to have your hood on. You should unmask the people for sure. So that's what happened. And we started figuring out, no, these people, it wasn't just a bunch of 12-year-old kids playing Call of Duty who took it too far. Like these people, these are grown men. One of the guys was a dude named Kevin Dolan. He has an account on Twitter right now called Extra Dead JCB, standing for John C. Bennett. It's like a picture of John C. Bennett's head. And that account's grown considerably on Twitter. But he would post a bunch of DezNat stuff. You know, save BYU from the evil Marxists and the, you know, all that stuff. He worked for is it Booz Hamilton, the company, and when he got his information leaked and he was unmasked, people realized, hey, this guy has a pretty important position at a government-tied company. So when he was canned, he started something called the Exit Movement. And the Exit Movement, I'm not sure if it's a 501c3 or an LLC or just a kind of a loose online thing, but it's this, you could almost call it like a political action committee for extreme far-right fundamental views, extreme far-right beliefs on race, on gender roles,
What's it
on
called
religion.
Again?
Exit.
Okay.
Kind of like how there's Blexit, this is Exit.
Okay.
Because they don't ever come up with anything original. They always have to. So they're hosting they just hosted a Natalism conference. Okay, so
which you were telling me about, which I just saw TikTok last night on CNN was covering this Natalism conference.
Yeah.
Please explain this, because this
is the strangest thing. Yeah. So an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who has like a bunch of kids in Virginia, is hosting a conference because there's not enough babies. And the real belief is not enough white babies. Okay. And the way to fix that is to get all the Nazis together and have them do what they need to do to make sure that we have more babies, because you can't lose the country. You need to have as many white babies as possible. And
just to pause you, I remember 10 years ago when I was a conservative and somebody would throw around the word Nazi online. It was like, okay, way to straw man much, or like, okay, now I've moved progressively over to the left, meeting you over on the left where I assume you are as well, because now we are at a point where we are in an actively authoritarian fascist place where those used to be buzzwords before, and now there's a lot of facts and actions backing that up a little bit better now. So Nazi is not a pejorative, just like slam dunk, I'm ending the conversation thing that I think that you're trying to use. I would say it's like before, hey, anyone listening to this, times have changed where Nazi is a actual pretty good descriptive term, not just like a catch-all pejorative.
Well, Joe Rogan's having Holocaust deniers on his show talking about like, well, was it really 6 million? Or maybe did they have it coming? And you're like, oh, this is Nazism. No, it is, you know?
I mean,
and I think
Elon Musk's Nazi salute was a Nazi salute. Anytime Elon Musk...
No. He's autistic. All the autistic people I know always make the mistake of doing Nazi salutes.
And I just want to say, if anyone wants to argue with that point, he at any point could deny that it was a Nazi salute, and he never has. And his parents were also apartheid South African, so we can go on and on about what we think about
his grandparents had to flee Canada for being a part of the Canadian Nazi Party.
So
he's reposted. Yes. These are Nazis. Yeah.
He'll repost things from other total outright Nazis on X and he'll say you've spoken the literal truth. Like, he has not danced around it. He has gone straight. I can't describe bit better with anything else than just the word Nazi.
As the American far right becomes more emboldened and is overt in their bigotry and their control freak nature, we have that represented in the church with DezNat. And I think the toughest pill to swallow was that the meme of the feminist in 2013 with the blue hair yelling into the camera. She was right about everything. Like, I think that's been the toughest pill for people to swallow. Like, yeah, no, like the The chuggy millennial leftists were absolutely right about everything they said was going to happen. It all happened. BuzzFeed was right about every single word. And it was like, at the time, I think it was annoying to people because the way, people went about their political lecturing felt self-serving to people. But now we're looking at it, we're like, no, they were right. Yeah, like they for sure were right about like all
so
this.
Like those memes of like the really angry feminists on college campuses who were like that. They were trying to defend your right to have the healthcare, to defend people to have like due process, so you can't just get shipped off to an El Salvadorian gulag. Like they were trying to get you rights as well as them. So just wanted to put that out there because it's important to see how far we've come, and just like internet meme culture to say now shit is legitimately hitting the fan. So you were talking about this conference. It's called a Natalism conference, trying to encourage more white babies being born. Unfortunately, a lot of incels showed up, but this is the movement that's going on right now, and that's what Carah, Hitler's Youth is kind of about.
You know what they're going to say though? They're going to say, well, what's wrong with white babies being born? And so that's like their reply. There's nothing wrong with white babies being born. But when you say, look, we're going to host a conference because we need white babies, it's a lot different than like your cousin and her husband have a baby and they're white and you're like, oh, look at a cute baby. Like there's a big difference between just letting the world naturally be and saying we need this because if there are more brown babies, that's bad. So that is like the way these guys are wordsmiths, and you have to be super precise in your language, and you can't leave any assumptions, like assume people are going to assume the rational, because they have a stranglehold on American young men. They've done a phenomenal job in infiltrating the culture of American young men to get them. I mean, you've got normal people who are reading stuff from Elon Musk and those associated with it that are saying that, the Holocaust may not have happened. Right. It isn't just on 4chan anymore. It's gotten so into normal discourse because the richest man in the world is pushing it.
Yeah. And even Nick Fuentes is like, we've gone too far. You see those memes?
Yeah.
Nick Fuentes is like, actually, we've gone a little too far, you guys.
In like the 2020 LDS apologetic world feel, like people who worked on This Is the Show and stuff, when all these DezNat memes were kind of floating around and no one always knew who created them, you thought it was a joke and you thought it was irony. No, like a lot of people didn't realize Brigham Young did nothing wrong was like a Nazi talking point. They thought it was like a way to troll in like you got to also remember, as a lot of these memes were created, the Dan Peterson joke was still a thing, like Tapir Dan. You remember that? Like that whole thing, like it was kind of a different time. And so when we were doing like during the This Is the Show time period, a lot of this was reacting to like, why are you guys bullying this 60-year-old Dan Peterson? Like, what did he do? We're making jokes back. That was the mindset. If anybody knew that there were not like Nazis were lurking and Trumpism 2.0 was coming and Elon Musk was going to totally flip and stop being the cool gadget guy who was like into this, it would have been a totally different thing. And so I do feel like part of it is a lot of people didn't realize what was coming. And even people, even like you take like Hillary Clinton, normal candidate, right? It was the most horrific thing ever that she used a private server for her emails. I would love if that was the most controversial thing a politician had right now. So now you've got people who, like were a part of the dialogue back then and was like, man, if I had known in 2020 what was lurking, I would have been doing something totally different than I'm doing now. So that's why I spent the last 2 years on X completely just fighting the DezNat stuff. But it gets even weirder too. If you type in DezNat on Twitter or X, you're going to come across a number of accounts. One account is a guy named Christian Ascania. And this is where you talked about the crunchy to alt-right pipeline and how like there's like an aspect of New Age that's also commandeered by Nazism. It always has been, right? Like Hitler was into the weird occultism stuff with the Thule Society and all that. The stuff put out by Graham Hancock, right? How, Atlantis, that whole thing. when you're at a campfire and you got some brownies and you're like, whoa, Atlantis, guys, what if there's a, it's fun with your buddies, but you don't want the Nazis to get a hold of that. Well, that's what they have. So there's an account there his name's Christian Escania. He gets a lot of hits. He gets a lot of viral tweets. And he promotes something. He promotes the Book of Mormon. He's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But he also promotes the Oralinda book. Do you know what that is?
No, do not.
The Oralinda book is, it's a fraudulent book. It's a fraudulent book created by, I think, like white supremacists in like the 1890s or something like that. That basically purports to be a book of Northern European ancestors that, like, chronicling the life of like tribes of these Northern Europeans, and it basically makes some of the Nordic gods similar to like Jehovah, and tries to piece it all together that Jehovah and Odin are the same, and Christianity is actually a Nordic religion, and the enemies of the Nordic religion are the non-Nordics, and so to really come unto Christ is to come unto recognizing the greatness of your blue-eyed, blonde-haired ancestors. Right. Okay, you got it. There's a lot to. Okay, so
I know it's just like that stickler thing that, like, shit, he was from the Middle East. That's so inconvenient for my Christian arguments. So we can just like make him white. It solves a lot of other problems.
Well, and we'll get into how DezNat views that whole thing, because that's also, man, it's so hard when a movement's so shitty. There's not one way to you can't just dissect it in a normal way. You've got to like go all around
to dissect it in the way of like, if they could all just get laid and incels could know how to talk to women. But if you watch Adolescence yet, everyone out there,
I haven't seen it. It's going to depress me. And the way you can kind of figure out if someone is a DezNat is when the subject is brought up on Twitter or X, they'll say one of two things. They'll say, DezNat hasn't been relevant since whenever, which is not true. And then they'll say, I'm not a DezNat. I'm not a part of any private Facebook group. If you meet a guy, he's got a swastika tattoo, and he's yelling about, Jewish people, and you go, are you a neo-Nazi? And he's like, I'm not a part of any Nazi lodge. Yeah, sure. You may not be going to meetings, but like, bro, you're a Nazi. Like that's kind of DezNat's also sort of this mindset of people who believe in this Abrahamic Americanism with a Mormon twist. And the way they skirt around that is to say, oh, I barely use that hashtag. I'm not a part of any Discord server. And so you have to ask them, hey, do you believe Brigham Young was wrong about race and that he was actually teaching the opposite of what Christ would teach? And they'll go, well, I mean, I wouldn't say it was the opposite. He was a chosen messenger. Brigham Young said on record that you should murder interracial couples. Like he said that. It's in church history. He said it in General Conference. Brigham Young fought for slavery in front of the Utah legislature, and it pissed off like Orson Pratt and some of the other apostles that were like, yeah, Brigham, you can't do this. We can't be a slave church. Brigham Young accepted slaves as tithing, right? Can we say that's evil and wrong? Well, I mean, who are you to criticize the Lord's anointed? Oh, I'm anointed in the temple. Isn't that kind of, don't we all get anointed? Hey, aren't we all the Lord's anointed? Hey, shouldn't we be able to easily say encouraging murdering interracial couples is wrong? Like, isn't that like a pretty normal thing to agree on? And when they won't admit that, you can kind of you kind of know, okay, so if that's not a deal breaker, what is? You just sneeze.
I gotta sneeze. Okay, it's true. That's not a deal breaker. What is? My sneeze went away though. So what is going through my brain currently at the moment though is I'm talking to Kwaku L here though, who has had numerous different talks with other Mormon apologists across the spectrum of Mormon belief, and I would say I'm thinking of the videos probably that you've done maybe years ago, probably on like Three Mormons or whatever it was called, defending like the priesthood and I can just feel like there's something that's not quite in my memory at this moment that I can access to, but I feel like that's an opinion, like an apologetic opinion that you might have had. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, that you might have defended Brigham Young's racism, maybe with some of your white pals on various podcasts.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So for me, like it's kind of a thing where when you get into this world too young, and you're like, you have
young and dumb, just defending Brigham Young when you should be, man.
So like, okay, the way I explain this to people is when I got into this scene and why I basically stepped out, it's more cordial now than before. Like, there wasn't Alyssa Grenfell before. There wasn't you before. There wasn't Life Take Two before. It was Mike Norton and like early Zelf on the Shelf. It was not like it's such a bigger thing now. And back then, it wasn't about debating the subject. Like, you were also the target. So when I started on Saints Unscripted, which was the most innocent, sweet, like actually non-controversial, like there is an episode about Jell-O. Mm-hmm. I'm in there like, hey, everybody, let's talk about Mormon Jell-O. And I have getting messages from anti-Mormons like, you're in an effing cult. And you're like, what is going on? Like,
I feel you.
So it was such a, like, back then when I was, my earliest apologetics, the defense of the church also felt like a defense of me because people were not separating the two. You can still go on exMormon Reddit right now and find the picture of me at Costco. I'm at Costco just buying stuff with a buddy, and there's like 1,000 comments on it about how I'm with my secret gay lover. Like, this is a real thing. And like every other joke is like Kwaku, Quacko, and you're like, these are the people that think like so when that comes to your daily experience with exMormons, you're almost like, I don't want to ever be like you people. So then the defense of Mormonism becomes the defense of you know. So having to unpack that's been interesting because now it's such an open space where there's more normal people involved, where like I kind of think, man, if Mormon online dialogue was the way it is now as it was back then, would I've ever gotten involved? Probably not. I probably wouldn't have. So I do think it was a lot more personal for me. Like oh my gosh, like this is so you kind of unlocked memory. The first like time I remember getting really angry, like livid, was the first like takedown that had ever been done of me was with Bill Reel and RFM, right? And they did a whole thing called Kwaku the Deceiver. But they pronounced it Kwaku for the whole podcast. It was like 2 hours of Kwaku the Deceiver, right? Which I get it. My name can be difficult, but also if you've downloaded like 80 of my videos to debunk me, like you know how to pronounce my name, right? So it was this thing, and the first message I got was from Bill. He's like, "You may not know who I am, but my podcast is much larger than your platform. We've discovered that you're a deceiver." And I'm like, "What the F?" And at the time, all of my videos were so tame. I hadn't done anything like this is the show. And so just the vitriol that came was so, it was just so troubling and caused so much anxiety and anger. The defense of the church became a defense of me. But now that that's not the case anymore, and you don't have people like Mike Norton representing exMormonism and stuff, and now it's a lot more normal people, it's kind of like, like now it's like you kind of think in a more open-minded way where I can say like, hey, okay, I'm not a BYU student, and I'm not defending myself. I'm just talking about this as a philosophy and as an institution. I can kind of easily say now, hey, Brigham Young has said and did things that are 100% indefensible. You can't defend them. But when you have to defend them because you and the church are like one, and you've got tens of thousands of people that basically have like these digital Bowie knives pointed at you, but from the exMormon direction, it completely clouds your mind and doesn't really give you a way to view it in a fair way. So I do feel like both sides have cleaned up their act. And so, you know, it it is better, but like 2019 and 2020 was the Wild West of Mormon online dialogue. It is not the same. And it was a lot more of a painful experience back then too, as to now it's, you know, I feel like it's just normal people now. Now I really feel like, you know, I don't know, it's just normal people talking, and before it really wasn't. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But it does lead to my next question, because like one of the first ways that I even became familiar with you was when you retweeted that infamous Inglorious Bastards one.
Yeah.
Where I won't play it, obviously, but it's the violent scene of Inglorious Bastards, and it's labeled like John Dolan getting the shit kicked out of him, and it's like Stone 16 over here and like Fair Mormon over here. And I think you just reposted it, and that enough, you know, was really scary for John Dolan. And some people advised him that he should call 911, file a police report, which I started working for John a little bit right after that. And that's not the move I would have made, but he was in a position. And all I know is that if my name was there on that label and there.
Right.
And the thing is I used to be a lot more active as a conservative on Twitter, as a matter of fact. So this is going to link into the story, but I promise I will bring it all back around. In about 2018, I was working for a conservative nonprofit. Which is
wild now. It just kind of, it's crazy.
I know, it's fun. I can argue about it all the time. My old boss, Katie Faust, she's been on Jordan Peterson's podcast now. So she's kind of a big deal. She's been on all the podcasts. So I helped grow her rise to fame back then. Things have changed. But anyway, back then, I was basically like DezNat adjacent. I didn't even know what it was, but I was trying to follow more LDS people at the time.
Yeah.
And then the leader was like JP Bellum. That's his name, right?
JP Bellum.
He reached out to me he's like, have you heard of joining DezNat? And I go, what is DezNat? And then all of these people just swarm me, and they're like, it means you follow the prophet. And I'm like, I'm not born yesterday. What are you guys talking about? So I look at the hashtag and I go, oh, okay, no,
bit much.
Not at all, not me. But what I did realize then, this is part of my evolution into exMormonism and becoming the nuance hoe truly, was a lot of things that happened on Twitter in 2018 and 2019 was I realized then that I was tweeting things that were pro-Christ, pro-LDS, and pro-conservative, but my main followers were all DezNat people then. And I realized the more I was being retweeted by DezNat people, because I could see what they were posting, I was following a handful of them. I was I don't want to look around and have an audience of people I don't respect, who I think are morons. And that's who I am writing tweets to, who I'm memeing for, and people who are applauding me are freaking DezNat. And so that was that and a few other things that happened on Twitter were part of my kind of shelf from conservatism and Mormonism kind of breaking and leading me out. And that's what I thought of when I first saw that meme that you reposted of John Dolan and the Glorious Bastard thing. Is I actually made one of my very first TikToks about it, targeting you, which I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Never saw it.
But I remember talking about where I'm like, Kwaku, when you repost this, you are having the people who are applauding this, who are saying awesome, who are a bunch of fucking morons. The same way that I was looking around at DezNat, that the only people who like that kind of stuff, and I'll say that now, and I would say that then, that like people who are into that kind of violent, even if it's just meme culture kind of rhetoric, I'm like, you're performing for a bunch of morons, and then at the end of the day, you're on the top of a heap of morons. I realized that that's not who I want my audience to be. I think you've matured and realized there's certain people you don't want to perform for, that you don't want to be like their token black guy, or their token this, or that you're you know, that you want to be an individual.
Yeah, no, not to like defend it, but
and the reason, just to clarify, the reason why I'm asking that question is because the question is basically, a lot of people would say that you've had a controversial and kind of past. And so is this you being hypocritical, or are you acknowledging that there's a Venn diagram on Mormon Twitter that you have played into some violent rhetoric that DezNat would also applaud you for, while simultaneously hating you? So
I think the meme was John Dolan as one from Inglorious Bastards, like the bald guy that they capture in the woods, and the bat was some think piece. I'm not sure if it was this show or something else. So I don't think they were saying hurt John Dolan. They were saying like John Dolan's rhetoric is destroyed by this information. Right?
Yeah, that's how I would have got it. It's a metaphor. It's a meme. It's a metaphor. But John's going to pick it up where he's saying, people want to beat the shit out of me till I die, is how he's going to interpret that.
And again, I do feel like John and I now have I wouldn't have like a relationship, but I do feel like we're on better terms now than we were before. But like, I didn't have anything positive. I could not find one positive thing to say about John Dolan back then. There was not one. I legitimately thought that guy was Satan. Like, my hatred for him was through the roof. It is no longer, right? But like, John had on various podcasts referenced me leading up to then, and it was never in a positive way. And he kind of tried to make a caricature out of me back when I wasn't controversial at all. Right. I mean, remember, this is still the mock Dan Peterson daily until he self-implodes, all because Dan Peterson put out PDF articles nobody read that were the most tame things ever. So it was still that era. And when John did a whole discussion about me on Mormon Stories, where he brought on this woman who wasn't a member, but she was obsessed with the church. And for like 10 minutes, they're talking about how I'm not really black because I'm educated. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah, okay.
It was right before I started working for John. It was a minefield. Yeah, I remember that.
Like the whole thing.
I wouldn't say it was exactly.
She did a majority of the talking. She was like,
yeah,
the church loves him because he doesn't really talk black. Because look, he's educated and his diction is impressive. And he's just sitting there like, yeah. And I'm like, and so like when he heard that,
he apologized. He put out an apology video, and
Carah, he put out an apology video on his burner channel.
I don't know. I wasn't there.
But, it's still up, though. It's still up. And I'm not even attacking John. I'm just explaining my mindset at the time as to why I hated them so much, right? So, like, stuff like that where you're just like, F you.
And just so you know, I have a Rolodex of everything that I can think of that you've said about John that I know, but I'm not going to get.
We called him a homewrecker for profit. Thank you. Yeah, no, we did everything. I mean, it was war, you know?
And that's one thing that I sincerely would like people to know is that John, for all of his faults, I know John very, very well. And John, the last thing that I would ever want to call John ever is a homewrecker for profit, because I have worked for him and he has always told me, leave the exMormon space. Like, this will wreck your life. It's just not a good place to just trust me, Carah. And I'm always like, no, I like taking chances. And he's always tried to make sure my family stays intact. Like, that is one thing John repeatedly tells me, like, over and over again, is like anti-homewrecking propaganda. And that is not what you will hear from a lot of exMormons, but John is extremely pro-family and has been instrumental in that in my life. Just wanted to clarify. Continue.
Well, yeah, and this isn't about John, but to those who would say, okay, is this hypocritical? We have to be willing to live in a world of degrees. We have to be willing to understand that personal beefs that two influencers had does not equate with we should push Nazism, right? Like, and so, I couldn't stand John Dolan. I didn't like the stuff that he had said about me. He obviously didn't like the stuff I said about him, and it escalated. We put out that one little mini documentary we put out, which is now no longer online, about some controversial stuff I don't feel like we should even say, but yeah, I mean, there was pure hatred. I mean, I detested this man more than anybody else.
And him, I think
because the way and so, like, for example, on Jubilee, when I was trying to talk about how I viewed the Book of Mormon, how I the verses about the skin curses and all that stuff, right? How I viewed it similar to Kill a Mockingbird, where To Kill a Mockingbird does have overt racism, but it's a part of the greater narrative at play to show how racism is bad. Mm-hmm. And I was comparing Nephi to Jacob and how there is a narrative in the Book of Mormon where there is overt prejudice and how it's later condemned. And when they were reviewing that part on Mormon Stories, he's like, laughing about it. It's like, Kwaku said it's anti-racism. It's like, bro, you're literally agreeing with a woman who says I'm not black because I'm educated, which is by definition a white supremacist leading statement, right? So it annoys me that you're then making fun of someone who's reading the Book of Mormon in a way that's anti-prejudice, because your whole thing is you want people to view it as prejudice, which is worse for Mormon society at large. So when you're making jokes and laughing about it, like, I don't see how you don't see that as like a complete dickish move, but like, bring up the meme from 5 years ago. So it's just like I
see where you're coming from. May I push back? I didn't push back on you.
Please,
that's what everyone said. I didn't push back on you enough, because my response to that would be, yeah, he was, to be honest, John, love you, but he's not paying attention in interviews as much as you might think he is. So I'm going to give him a pass in the way where he should not have platformed somebody saying that, but in the moment, I don't know how much he was listening. Like sometimes the most the easiest answer is like sometimes
that happens on a lot.
Yeah, where he might not have been paying attention. We'll give him that, and he did apologize. He did recognize that it's the wrong thing to do, and I think that he has made strides in his actions. Is what I care more about, not people's words, but their actions. Is he does try to be an anti-racist and actually live out the values that he believes in. So as a person, I think that he's a good guy in those ways. Now, the Book of Mormon, I think we would have to be honest. So this leads into another good question here. Right. The Book of Mormon has been used as a bully scripture to do all kinds of subjugation and all kinds of horrible acts by Brigham Young, by people. So the very thing that John, what is he trying to do? I think people like John, people like me, people who understand systemic racism and the roots of it, whether in America or within the Mormon church, we're looking at the roots and we're saying this book is a problem, and then we're looking at the outgrowth. So what is he trying to do? What am I trying to do? What are you trying to do? We're trying to say, what are the roots of horrible movements like DezNat, and saying it starts with taking this scripture, taking the words of these prophets. When they say follow the prophet, Brigham Young did nothing wrong. That all has a home and is amplified within this culture, within the prophets, within these general conference messages, within the scriptures in Mormonism. What can we do to acknowledge that, to talk about the systemic harm it's caused in people's real lives, and then root it out? It's all about what are we actually doing with, the Play-Doh of this Mormonism that we have now.
Right. And that's, a lot of people have tried to do that with the Book of Mormon. They've said, like, here are the different perspectives on it. I read it as kind of do it red letter style, right? In the same way you look at the New Testament and you read the words of Jesus specifically, but people treat the words of Jesus and the words of Paul as if they're the same, and they're not. Jesus says very specific things in the New Testament, and other apostles say other things. And when you read the Book of Mormon, like you read Second Nephi, there's nothing when they're quoting Jesus at all. He talks about how Lamanites are cursed because of their wickedness, and Nephi is always the one to insert his racial stuff. Nephi's brother, Jacob, is the one who condemns that racial hatred. So there is a real conversation that should happen on, yes, the Book of Mormon has racism, but why is it there? Is it because the message of the Book of Mormon is to say blacks/Native Americans are bad? Or is it to show, hey, there is prejudice in society and this is what it leads to? Mm-hmm. I think that's a legitimate way to read it. Mm-hmm. I think that's what it says. But it seems like where DezNats and exMormons link hands is they're like, nope, that's not a reasonable way. The book is pro-racism and must be read that way. Well, sure, the DezNats love that because, they're hosting Natalism conferences and they want to have their incels get laid to make babies with that and marry these AI women with huge Goombas, right? But then the exMormons, you have to ask, wait. Why is the Book of Mormon reading the Book of Mormon as an anti-racist text, that mindset, why is that getting mocked so much on exMormon Reddit or in YouTube comment sections? If you think the church is oppressive and wrong and you want to get rid of racism in the church, you're not going to get the Book of Mormon to vanish out of the world tomorrow. So is not the better way to get people to read it in a way that is anti-bigoted? Why would you be opposed to getting people to look at it in a way that's anti-bigoted? Unless you're saying, I want people to keep it bigoted because I think if the church is racist, less people are in it. That's just so, I mean, that's kind of like Joker mindset.
Well, you're also,
like, you know,
well, Kwaku, I don't want to talk about your lived experience, white person to black person here, but I am thinking of
no,
the,
say everything. That's okay.
I'm referencing, the interviews I've had with people and the friends that I have that are black and that they have experienced overt, systemic, impersonal, in your face racism. Their kids have. And it is because for so long, people have viewed this text as, as supporting their racist white supremacist ideals because it has been in the text. There is a way to read it. It has been reinforced by prophets. It's in Utah culture and in Mormon culture. So I'm not saying it's so I just want to say that your perspective of ex-Mormons are wanting to make this racist kind of skirts around the fact that people have lived experiences of it just being racist and then them being forced to become an ex-Mormon. It's not that they're an ex-Mormon and now they look back and they're like, hey, that's racist. I'm labeling it racist. It's like, no, my lived experience is that the text taught me that, my race is inferior. That's what I'm trying to say. It's absolutely, it's deeper.
No, 100% agree with what you're saying. And that's why I'm saying, what if the text isn't saying that? And what if people have been reading it wrong? I'm saying Marky Peterson was wrong. I'm saying Brigham Young was wrong. I'm saying Drew Reuben Clark was wrong. I'm saying the little factory guy, Boyd K. Packer. I'm saying those people were wrong on race and they completely missed the mark. And that's also why, I've said I've gotten in trouble many times on Twitter for saying pro-LGBT stuff because our church has been on every civil rights movement in American history. We have been wrong in each one. So statistically, are we wrong on LGBT stuff? Well, we're already changing the tune from 10 years ago to now. So we know what's going to happen. We know what's going to change. But I'm just saying, so many people hold the Book of Mormon dear. Would we rather have a society that doesn't allow for the Book of Mormon to be read as an anti-racist text? And should that conversation about it being an anti-racist text just be laughed at and mocked and attacked and ridiculed by ex-members? Or should ex-members say, look, I don't believe in it, but the evil racist stuff I witnessed growing up in Bountiful or Kaysville, that was stomach churning. So you know what? If Mormons are reading this in a way that is going to root out racism, that's a good thing, even though I don't believe in that book. That should be the mindset. But I'm saying it's not. Instead, we're getting, oh, that's so stupid. This book is racist, and if you interpret it another way, then you're coping. It's cognitive dissonance. It's like, fine. So if we keep it your way, then we're still just going to have racist bullying in Utah high schools. Is that what we're saying? Just keep it the way it is. So that's what I'm saying. There's almost like this pessimism with the ex-Mormon online space where it's almost like sometimes they don't want to fix anything. They want it to stay bad because they just want to watch the whole thing burn down, which is how the Joker is acting in The Dark Knight. It's this nihilist. It's nihilism, and it isn't. Nihilism ultimately isn't progressive, right? So I hope it made sense.
It does make sense. I could hear the ex-Mormon comment section wanting me to argue on this point 1,000 times more, but I'm not going to.
You guys are right, though. You guys are right. Brigham Young posted, but on Twitter so much. Brigham Young was tweeting. Brigham Young taught evil things. I mean, you can't justify the stuff Brigham Young said about race. You can't. It's impossible to. Jesus Christ was not there inspiring anything he wrote or said or did in regard to race. We know that. But how many times can we have a podcast about that subject? Okay, great. We understand that. If you don't put something in place on the shelf, then you just have an empty spot there, and that empty spot can get filled up by DezNat when the culture becomes radicalized.
I can see what you mean, because now it's the same opinion, ex-Mormon. I see what you're saying there. There's a famous Neil Brennan, I think it's Neil Brennan, joke where he says that atheism is the ultimate white privilege. Have you heard this joke? Because black people would be like, black people are often more religious, and white people are like, oh, another afterlife? I can't be interested in that because this one's already so great. That kind of idea. What I would say, instead of arguing about all of the stuff that I know ex-Mormons would want me to argue about, running as a dialogue in my head, what I would say is, I know that when I was really Christian and really Mormon, I worshipped a type of Jesus Christ that was what I thought everyone else was worshiping. And I was interpreting everything as I thought they were interpreting it, is the most self-sacrificial light of Christ, just the best, you're helping out your neighbors, like what we all hope a Mormon is. Like, that's the type of Jesus Christ I worshiped. And I didn't realize that there were other people who were using religion in such negative, evil ways. I was like, oh, I didn't know that we were doing that in our religion. And so all we can do is just encourage people to actually try to take this religion that you're saying is not going to go anywhere, with this book that's not going to go anywhere, and what kind of ideals of Jesus Christ are we actuating out into the real world? Because
and ultimately I think that's the solution, right? Like even with because Black people are religious in America. That's kind of how we got through all the tough stuff. But if you look at like what the civil rights movement from even pre-Jim Crow birth, like there wouldn't be an LGBT rights movement without the civil rights movement, right? Like that's it so much came from that. And so, had all the early abolitionists and freedmen and civil rights protesters just said, Christianity sucks, church is oppressive, there would have never been a common tool that was able to convince the average person who was subconsciously bigoted of like, hey, wait a minute. Actually, I don't think God wants us burning crosses and hanging people. Yeah, wait, what are we doing? We should listen. This is completely right. So that faith in the divine is the most effective tool to create a society that all can be beneficial, that can benefit everybody. So the question is, well, what happens when these institutions are do have people involved that may hold, like for example, Dallin H. Oaks, right? The latest information I read on Dallin H. Oaks, and I talked with a friend, is that Dallin H. Oaks is on the World Families Council, right? And the World Families Council is this big nonprofit organization that helps get legislation passed in different countries, so to preserve the family unit. And allegedly, one of the bills they got passed was in Uganda, which is known as the Kill the Gays bill, where in Uganda, if you're caught doing something gay more than twice, you get executed. And that was heavily put forward by the World Families Council, and Dallin H. Oaks sits on the board of the World Families Council, or World Families Organization. Please put the real thing in, as I'm talking, but that was the latest information I read on that. Okay.
When was this?
This isn't that long ago. This was with this, so when stuff like that, it makes you go, we should be far away from anything to do with the Kill the Gays bill. Like, this is insanity, and it's incredible cruelty, and Jesus Christ isn't anywhere near that. So what do you do when institutions have taken the wrong side? Do you just say, oh, you know what? Screw it, I'm out of here? Well, you can do it that way, or you could say, look, wait. There are people who are relying on us to make things for the better, right? There are people that are relying on us to not just get fed up and say, oh, this is too much to handle, I'm out of here, I'm going to go drink a beer. No, they're relying on us, right? So I don't like the nihilism of the let's just flee. Like, you do have to do something. Now, maybe you don't feel, maybe you don't really have that progressive bone. You're like, screw it, not my problem. I think this church sucks. They want to do wacky stuff to people. Let them do it. I'm doing my own thing. A lot of people do take that approach. But when you have skin in the game and it's been a part of your online persona, then you actually do feel called to say, hey, let's read this text differently. Hey, let's have conversations on how our church can, should, and eventually will welcome gay people. Let's talk about how the church is even changing on trans. Like, people are getting baptized under their new gender identity. That's happening right now in the church. So it's not like these things are unwinnable battles. The church always adapts. Elder Holland's on camera saying that. He says society is here and we're here. And as society goes here, we slowly go here. And then one day you realize we're over here. We used to be over there. So the apostles have already said, look, we are going to change. We always progress. We just do it slower. Kind of just how it is, right? But maybe we can speed up that process because we have young people, especially LGBTQ people who's, you know, are on the margins and are extremely isolated. So what do? I'm just one guy. Great. I'm just one guy, but we can push it in the right direction. But like, we need you guys' help to do that. And that meaning the exMormons, meaning the exMormons. We need you guys' help to do it, you know, like I
try to do it as the nuance-o, and to be honest, like I really try to be nuanced, and not because it's a brand thing, but because that's just how my brain works. Because I see how I was when I was in the church. Like nobody could have gotten me out of the church, and I know what kind of messaging I needed to hear. And I also feel like there is just this faction of people who are too far gone. Sounds like my parents, but then there's just other people who they're going to stay, and what can be said, what kind of bridges can be built. And I'm not as much of, I don't know, let me put it this way. As an ex-Mormon who does make their living talking about the church, there is a way to lean towards like whatever bleeds leads. And so the most controversial, the most bombastic version, I think you would understand that too from your side of content. You know, it's like whatever is the most outrageous, bombastic version is going to get the most clicks, but what is actually the best for the people that I care about? And I haven't podcasted very much over the last couple of months because
you've been doing Tim Ballard stuff.
Because Tim Ballard needs to be taken down, and there's no nuance there.
But on that subject of what Tim Ballard's beliefs are, like white horse prophecy and constitution and all that stuff, that kind of Abrahamic Americanism, that is another part of DezNat too. You know, and how America really, really is the promised land for these people. And it's like America, like these people view the founding fathers as prophets. You know, and you've had
Hannah Stoddard on your show. I don't know if you call it your show, but on Ward Radio.
Well, it isn't my show
that your face is on a lot. And when I saw you had Hannah Stoddard on there, who is like the little Rod Meldrum of the firm foundation of the Book of Mormon as an evidence conference.
All the interactions with Hannah have been super positive. She's extremely nice. She's incredibly intelligent. I have nothing bad to say about Hannah Stoddard. One thing she did say that freaked me out though was she put out this she put out a video, I think it was on Marxism in the church, and she was building up to this whole thing about how the left is trying to destroy the procreation of white people and how Satan's whole attack is to get rid of white people. And I was like, whoa. I was like, whoa, Hannah, this is like Nazi talking points, right? Like this is not, there is no agenda. Like there is no white genocide. Yes, there's not as many white people, but like, that's because you're approaching it of white people, and then everyone else is not white as one thing.
Mormon homeschoolers. It's like, no offense, that's where it always leads.
Well, and it's insanity. It's like, hey, if you did that and you were Korean, you're like, I can't believe it's Asians versus all the non-Asians. Yeah, well, everything's going to be that way. But the reality is, it's not all one group, and then there's white people. So, but she was pushing that, and it was kind of like, Hannah, like, hey, you got to be careful with that.
Was this on Ward Radio or no?
It was on her YouTube. And I was like, hey, I didn't say this to her, but in my head, I'm like, Hannah, you got to be careful with this. This is, you know.
That's what I say when somebody picks up a Book of Mormon, but I'm not going to get into that. You're like, be careful. This could lead to DezNat fellowship.
No.
Just kidding.
They hate me.
Yeah, because.
You see the memes they make about me, by the way. You see the memes.
I do. And what I'm glad we're having this conversation about is because there's been a lot of meme wars and a lot of shit that's gone down. Mormons, ex-Mormons, DezNat, you, me, everybody. And
but we've all grown up. I think that's really important to realize, like, everyone's grown up, and like people, like, on one hand, where certain things are unforgivable, like trying to get your church to embrace Nazism, but like also at the same time, it's like, look, people do change and grow. And like, when you're in the church and you've had an abusive experience in the church, and like that's something that's so negatively affected your mind, your emotions, it's caused you so much grief and pain, you are going to lash out and be kind of angry when you're expressing yourself for the first time, right? So like, you do have to give grace for people that, like, you know, you look at an interview and it's like a girl who got molested by her bishop, and you're like, oh my gosh. And then it's like, yeah, you know what? She's going to be angry, because of course you should be angry. Like, you got to have grace for people's righteous anger when they are being abused. And then, the people that get hurt in that process are going to be upset too. So like, I do feel like just the space in general, there was a level of toxicity that was present years ago that isn't as present now.
Do you still do a debate with RFM or his equivalent wearing a
oh my gosh, I
vest?
Still to this day, one of the funniest things. I think that was hilarious. Like, when I'm a grandpa, and I were like, one time wore a bulletproof vest to this debate about the Book of Mormon. Why? I don't know. I don't know why we did it. It was really funny in the moment. Like,
I just want to play some soft music. I want to light some incense, and I want to explain to Kwaku face to face. And we never have another example. While I understand from your perspective, I can see how that's funny. What you just said about like people who have like righteous anger about the church, I think from the exMormon perspective, you guys are trying to say that like exMormons are the violent, angry, evil ones that you really needed to wear those for your protection. And I think you were just trolling all of us by saying like, you guys knew that no one was going to come and shoot you, right? And,
well, there were actual threats. Like, Cardin got a legitimate threat.
As he should. Okay.
So, no. He got a legitimate threat. So we were like, we're in the middle of Salt Lake City. We didn't know what's going to... I have gotten weird messages.
Okay. Well, that may be true.
Did I ever tell you about the guy who did the temple... the old temple things on a YouTube video and said he was going to blood atone me? Yeah, I got that was weird shite.
But
okay,
from our perspective, I think it just is this everything about so much of the rhetoric of the people you associate with sometimes, and you yourself, and a lot of the Mormon apologist community is just a total sweeping under the rug, just really disrespecting the lived experience systemically too of so many Mormons, and that the violence that has been put on LGBTQ Mormons and exMormons and people who have felt real harm to feel like we're the violent ones when you're there to defend a system of violence and calling us the violent ones. That's where it's just like, piss off. So I can see from your perspective how it's funny. It threw more logs on the furnace of the fire.
I think the way I see it is, and the way I saw it at the time was...
Oh, now we're doing apologetics on our version of apologetics.
Yes. So first, at the time, I felt like a lot of the rage, the righteous anger was fake. And what I mean by that is, to this day right now, if you go on exMormon Reddit and you still just type in my name, the amount of like actual homophobic stuff is like incredible. Like, it's literally like...
Guys, as a face of the exMormon community, stop it, knock it off. Like, literally... No.
Almost every post there's like about Kwaku, there's like 13 comments of like, oh, he's closeted gay for sure. This guy's a gay. Okay. And it's like...
Some people...
The upvotes, it's like 80 upvotes.
Can we also just acknowledge that there's a lot of people in the exMormon community, the only thing the difference is now they don't believe in the church, but it doesn't mean that they're any better of a person than when they were Mormon and doesn't have intelligent things to offer to the conversations.
Right.
All I'm saying is, yeah, that exists in exMormonism too. Knock it off.
But
guys.
That's why I was like, when they were saying, oh, the church, you endorse this homophobic church. And I'm like, dude, the people saying this to me, go to their homepage. It's the most like homophobic crap you'll ever read. So you're liars. I feel like you're co-opting a true struggle, trying to make it your own, and then throwing that at me when like there's cleanup in your house. It's like, look, I've said over and over again for years, I'm pro-LGBT marriage. I think there's going to be LGBT ceilings. I grew up doing musicals in Houston and San Francisco. Like, I've always been
let me ask,
tight with the LGBT community.
Why do people get you so wrong? Because I can tell you why. It's very easy.
I don't know if people... Well, okay, I will say...
Why do people assume that they can say those kinds of things and that they wouldn't think that you have those opinions? Because obviously, people haven't heard every single opinion that you've ever had. What they're going to do is they're going to come across a video of yours and they see you defending a homophobic church.
It's mostly people would say, hey, your church is this. There's not a lot of people, I think, that have said that I am homophobic. I don't really get that. I mostly get your church is. So that's what I'm saying. I felt like it was fake when some guy says that, and then he's on there, buddy with people posting on X, like when someone's like, oh, your church is a homophobic cult, and you should read the CES letter. And you go, and Jeremy Runnels is like one of the top users on exMormon Reddit, and it's like, hey, is there no call on exMormon Reddit to get rid of this actual homophobic stuff? Like, no, it's all fine. Just that's, I know all you guys technically have in common is that you're not members of the church anymore, but like it is a community. Like there is the Thrive conference. You guys do have conferences. Why is there never any call to like get rid of the bigotry there? Why is it that like my name, the way it's pronounced, is an ongoing joke in the exMormon community when it's like the fifth most common name in Ghana for men? Like,
well, let's
why
end
is
that
it
right
like,
now? I think I said this last time when you were on. Did I tell you how there was a breakdown in the exMormon community that I was there for? This is like 2021, when exMormon TikTok started getting going. And I was new on the scene doing my cool, awesome stuff. And different creators were all popping up. And Mike Norton, who...
That's all you gotta say. I know exactly where it's going.
Now you know where this is going.
Yeah, right.
And so people looked up to him and they respected him and they watched his videos and what he had to say. But then anytime he was starting to talk about you, he would call you Kwaku. And
Quacky.
Yeah. And so the more progressive minded ones in the community, I remember people were just chiming in like, hey, that's inappropriate. Like, I don't care if you dislike what he has to say. It's totally disrespectful to call somebody, especially a person of color, to not pronounce their name correctly. And you know what Mike Norton said to that basically was, fuck off. Like, he did not care. But it all really came down to the first inciting incident was me and other women saying, hey, don't call Kwaku. That's disrespectful and lame.
I didn't know that. Okay.
And now I have a ton of hate videos from this guy all over because it started with that. I did not know. Well, no, you've never told me the story. I didn't know that. That's so. And I say that too because you're talking about people calling you gay or all these other things, which I'm like, don't we already talk about how we want to talk about the substance on this side?
Now, looking back now, one of the regrets I actually have is because I was so caught up in how upset I was in the way the communities interacted and how I feel like I actually had a certain set of beliefs and opinions and people were getting me wrong because people didn't want to talk to me. They wanted to talk around what they thought I believed. Sometimes I did something where it's like someone would share like their lived experience or their reality. And in my head, I'd be like, I would discount it. Cause I'm like, oh, you're just one of those exmos who, when really people are complicated, right? But when you're in like a fight or flight mode, it's us versus them. This is a war. There is no time to like, well, let's be thoughtful. It's like, no, this is a war. And so like, you're kind of in this like psychosis where it's like, you think it's a race to like the second coming, you know what I mean? And you're like, huh? So looking back, one of the things I wish I actually do regret is like, people would be like, hey, this is what happened to me. This is my story. And it didn't register in my brain. It would just be like, you're lying to me or you're trying to manipulate me. You're trying to, when looking back, it's like, no, some of these people are just, hey, this is what happened to me. I was treated terribly here, here, and here. And you're like, and you kind of wish you could go back and like, just kind of have like a human moment.
Are you describing kind of like a cognitive dissonance where your need to defend the religion, to believe in the religion is standing in the way of you feeling like genuine connection and empathy with somebody who's telling you about an experience that contradicts what you hope and idealize about the church? Is that kind of what you're saying? Or am I getting that wrong?
Like maybe 50%. I think it's other 50%. Like the vitriol was so heavy. I felt like everyone was lying.
What do you mean the vitriol?
Someone would say like
an actual friend comes to you.
No, I mean like someone would message me and be like when I was in the church, this happened to me and it was so horrible. And I'm like, that's just a fake exmo who's trying to get a screenshot out of me. And they're lying. Right. And it's because it's like, well, all the exMormons I'm interacting with right now are coming from these sites where they're, Quacky the homo, like an actual thing, by the way, an actual headline posted on Reddit. And I'm like, okay, these people are lying. Looking back, I think with those people who did reach out privately, just hearing their life story, looking back, I'm like, I wish I could have just been like, all right, noted. I need to like kind of think about that. Why did you have such a bad experience with being bullied in the church, or this or this or this? And like, what can we as influential members in the church do to make that better? So I hate that that's one of my regrets. Like looking back, I'm like, I should have just really taken people at their word more and just been like, man, like heard the human story, you know? So that's one of the big regrets I have. I still think the bulletproof vest is funny though. I really still think it was funny, but also I do think you have to make jokes. Like, you know, this is not a fun area, and you've got to be able to laugh along the way, or else you will go crazy. Like you have to be able to laugh, and like and sometimes those jokes, like there are people in the LDS apologetic world that like Kwaku know, like people I used to be friends with that like we don't talk, we're not buddies anymore, like completely, because I said online like, hey, I believe in this thing which is not church doctrine, and because of that I've been like
You're
totally
like, oh,
cut off.
Yeah.
So I mean, just nature of the beast, right? But like now I'm kind of in the place of like where now all that dust is settled and everybody kind of just went through all their crap. It's kind of like I feel like I'm kind of in the first time ever where I can just be a normal human and just be like, here's what I think. This is what I think. And that's a good place to be. But unfortunately, that also means vulnerability. And that can be exploited by, well, Nazis in the church, right? So kind of, if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's a really interesting answer. And I think a lot of people will be satisfied with that, because I can imagine a lot of people watching this be like, when is he going to say that he regrets anything he's ever done or said? And I'm like, I have been in this space. I feel like I was a newborn baby when I came on the scene in like 2021. I'm like, you're taking me at face value of the stuff I said when I was a baby? I
deleted all the videos I ever made.
Really?
They're not online anywhere. Like, I think that's another thing people like. I used to have a whole channel where I was getting a lot of views on. I deleted everything. So like, it's just like.
Let me ask you this.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Here's an important question.
I'm talking about Dr. Phil right now.
Oh, it is.
I'm on you or Julie Hanks right now. I'm on the Julie Hanks show. That's what's going on.
This is an important one because the way in which all of this kind of converges together, because people will know you as, for lack of a better term, like a Mormon apologist. Like they would associate you with somebody who has faith in the LDS church and makes apologetic arguments. Simple as that, right? So you take a person who is Black, and then you contrast that with the racist doctrines of the LDS church and its leadership. And then this guy who in people's mind has been defending this church, are now a victim of the outgrowth of the racist doctrines that now manifest in this Deseret national online community, that you are now a victim. The irony that you're a victim of the very kinds of culture and doctrines that the church has perpetuated, and that in a certain aspect, people could say that you have not directly said, I endorse Brigham Young's racism by endorsing the church as a whole or in any pieces of it, that has now led to, you being under fire and being persecuted as a Black member of the church. What do you think to that argument?
So, to that argument, I say the reason DezNats dislike me is not because of any apologetics I've done. It's because I'm Black. So even if I was never like an apologist,
it still isn't. There's an irony, though, nonetheless. I'm trying to think of an analogy.
Well, yeah. There's an irony, but the irony doesn't necessarily have a lesson. Like that.
The lesson is if a church has a lot of racism in it, keep your distance from. But that also it. Yeah, I can see how people would want to me. That's kind of like the same thing as like when I see like a headline where it's like a soybean farmer
impacted by tariffs, and you know nothing about this soybean farmer, and then like a liberal account's like, that's what this random person I know nothing about gets for voting for Trump. And you're like, you know nothing about this situation. It kind of gives that same thing of like, well, I fell in love with the restored gospel, and I fell in love with the beauty of it, and I don't think the message at all is bigoted. But the first, 10 episodes I ever did in Saints Unscripted when I was a teenager, we talked about the priesthood ban. It was very light. We didn't get into the insane quotes. It was just like, look, the church did this, and now we don't, and everyone's equal, and that's what Jesus wants us to focus. Like, easy, palatable stuff. The reaction to that was, as a black man, I can't believe you would even believe in this. You should be. It's like, okay, wait, like freaking hold your horses. You also have to understand the psychology of a black person in the United States and in Christianity in the United States is there's, if we left every single institution that had a racist past, we couldn't even be here.
And I've heard you make that argument before, and my argument back to that is there's a big difference between like being born in America and I'm an American and we have a racist past as a country versus like paying tithing and upholding somebody as a prophet and studying the scriptures and like believing in a religion that feels more like a choice.
Can I push back on that though?
Go ahead.
What about veterans? What about black veterans who fought for the country, who actually believed in the actual American ideals, even though they weren't afforded to them at the time? They believed those ideals would be best for society because they thought it would play out differently. And they said, one day my grandchildren will have complete equality. I don't have. That's why I'm willing to go fight in this war. And I'm willing to pay taxes. Like, in some regard, that is even more invasive than being a member of the church in a sense, right? Like the same argument you're making of like, well, okay, you're in this church, you should leave this church. Black people shouldn't be in this church because of its racist past, which is kind of weird. Like, why do we have blacks in the church? It's kind of like the DezNats would agree, but like you can make that argument with America. Like, should a black man have gone to fought for America in World War II? Like, should he have? The country at the time was literally saying, you can't drink out of this water fountain. You can't get a business loan. We can seize your property at any time. Pay us taxes. If you don't like it, shut the F up. They still went and did it. Like my grandpa went and fought Nazis. So it's like, well, at some point you do have to have that conversation. Should they have done that? Was that giving credence to a completely bigoted institution that had done far worse than the LDS Church? I mean, can I get your thoughts on that? Like, it's a real...
yeah, that's a legitimate point because the problem that we're obviously talking about here is just this underlying issue of racism in the country, no matter what. So there's racism in the church and there's racism within the country. And you're asking me, should he have gone and fought for this country? And, you know, each war is a little bit like subjective about the nuts and bolts of everything. But yeah, World War II, thumbs up on that one from me. And if I heard you correctly, you're talking about the ideals that like your grandfather would have gone and fought for as a black veteran. And you're saying that now you as like a Black Latter-day Saint, you are still fighting for those ideals of a better future for, you know, black children within the LDS Church. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. I'm saying, look, the same way my grandpa saw that the ideals of the American promise, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness had never been afforded to his people at all. He had no reason to believe it would, but felt that it would be so. He was willing to go and fight for this country because he knew those ideals were coming, in the sense where, you know, there's always going to be black people in Utah. Utah's expanding. We're going to have 1 million more people by 2035 here. There's going to be a lot more black people in the church. It's just how it is. And I'm seeing a future. I'm like, you know what? If I can do something right now to make sure that when there is a little black girl in seminary, when they get to these verses in the Book of Mormon, they're going to be taught that this is how Nephi was judging the Lamanites, and look at how Jacob condemned him and condemned that mindset. And that's what the Lord wants of us. That's what I want it to be taught, because I don't want that little girl to be in seminary and being taught, and this is when they got cursed and turned black. And then they all look at her and now she's got this self-doubt with her for years. That's really the harmful impact. You can remove everything else, remove away every policy, remove away every discussion of this, and just think about the actual emotional impact it's going to have, like Black children have in the church. And we have the power to make it so that it isn't that way. We really can through our influence. That's the beautiful thing. And that's why I've pushed that message so much, because that's really who I'm thinking about. My goal isn't to get people to go, well, I guess the priesthood ban wasn't actually that bad. Like, and there's all the arguments people make of like, well, why did Jesus withhold the priesthood from this tribe and this tribe? All those arguments are baloney to me. The real argument is always the future, right? And there is a lot of beauty in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There's a lot of beauty in the restored gospel. There's also a lot of terrible things our church has done. We can name it. We can talk about the Lamanite placement program. We can talk about the abuse and polygamy. We can talk about all of it. Okay? But there is still a lot of beauty, and it's still a way for people to connect to God, which is something that some people innately need to have for happiness, right? So my apologetics in regard to race in the church is not to get you to put a blind eye to what was said in the past, but it's to get to change the future.
And I'm glad you say that. And I'll just add 2 cents here, that I'm glad to hear you say that, honestly. And that is honestly the best argument for staying in the church that I've probably ever heard, because usually the argument goes along the lines of like, we're here to change things. And I always make the joke of like, that's every Mormon Stories guest is like, I'm going to stay in Relief Society and I'm going to raise my hand. And it's like, you're coming up against an avalanche of systemic doctrine, rules, white supremacy, a million things that are just top down that you will not be able to change no matter how much you raise your hand. But I think when you have a platform and you have a voice and the way in which that you could do it, I understand where you're coming from.
This is 2021. Davis County, a 10-year-old Black girl named Isabel was bullied so terribly at school, she committed suicide. 10 years old, Davis County, only a couple years ago, right? I wasn't in the classroom, but enough information came out about this where people discovered a lot of this was racial bullying. Right. And so when you hear stories like that, you know, you think we're only hearing about that because she's no longer living here.
True.
To what level are things happening like that and it goes under the rug? It's never acknowledged. One of my good friends, he's only 22. When he went on he was in the MTC, he had someone in one of the lessons say that, oh yeah, I mean the Lamanites, like Black people were cursed, but like now they're not. Like he said that nonchalantly, and my friend was like, what? Like, yeah, the guy was from Duchesne, one of those small like towns anyway, but he was like, what are you talking about? So you've got a lot of normal people in the church that hear that like, what the F? But then you do have those people that silently believe it, or it's subconsciously believe it. They're just like, oh sure, but they haven't thought about it a lot. But then how does it manifest to just normal people? It can manifest in that way, where you have a 10-year-old girl who takes their life. That's stomach churning. That should make all of us worried, right? So, and by the way, that's the kind of thing that DezNat's okay with, which is why it's such a dangerous ideology and movement. Like that's the kind of thing where they don't see that as a bad thing, because they are seeing less Black people and less brown people as a purification process leading up to the second coming. So, I look at it, I'm like, man, I'm not one of these people that's like, I'm not starting a 501c3. I don't have a Faith Matters. I don't have my own podcast. I'm just a recurring guest in other people's. And I've kind of like timed out of a lot. Like I've really not done a lot of apologetics, but you know, that is something we should do. And look what's happening right now. The church and the NAACP have this great relationship where now the NAACP is you know, working with President Nelson, and the church is putting out all this stuff about how we can do better in getting rid of racism. For the first time ever, the church said Jesus isn't white. Interracial marriage isn't wrong. Now, it's 2025. It's like, it's crazy that we're like finally just got it. But
they're
think
like,
about
is
that.
it safe enough to say this?
Like for the church to say, no, Jesus was not white European, that actually did shock a lot of people. There's an account on Twitter right now called Gray Mountain. gets a lot of hits. He's up there with, he's kind of like reposts the Phil Lyman kind of, do you know what Phil Lyman? He was the guy who ran against Spencer Cox because Spencer Cox was a secret liberal, right? That whole thing. This is a guy who gets hundreds of retweets daily. He's a member of the church, but he's disenfranchised because the church has gone too left for him. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I miss the old Utah. Utah used to be perfect haven for white people. Utah used to be beautiful and conservative, and now look at it. And the LDS Church is this globalist organization that's pushing for the erasure of our people. You're like, dude, I think you need to go talk to girls. I really think you need to go talk to some girls. Yeah. But like, that's his mindset, right? So there are now people who think our church has gone so far left and is now this like BLM leftist ally.
Yeah.
So like, you're here going, the church is inherent, the church is white supremacy, the church is racist, the church is bigoted, the church is homophobic. And you have people that are going, no, it's none of those things enough. And they have a platform now. Mm-hmm. And people are saying, yeah, you're completely right. Our church is this leftist woke organization.
And you want to know why? It's because they're the real snowflakes. You hate in others what you see in yourself. So I think it's because time has proven that they're the real snowflakes and they can't handle even the smallest amount of progressive change within the church. Well, where I say that's fear. Not enough. But
if people are afraid, like you have, okay, I've got to say, I have to choose my words very carefully here. You've got people. Okay, you can example, the anti-DEI push in the U.S. is at its face a cry and want for DEI, right? You remember how they said, let's get rid of all the affirmative action in colleges, and they're like, that'll do. And then like black admission stayed the exact same, and these people were like, wait, what's going on? Yeah, the whole narrative that black people only got into colleges because of affirmative action actually wasn't true, and the studies have proven that. And people were so shocked by it. And like, well, it's DEI. Once we get rid of the DEI out of airlines, everything will be better. Let's get rid of all the brown people in air traffic controlling. There has been a plane crash every 6 days since Donald Trump's been elected. Oh, we thought it was all the black people. No, it was not the black people. It was right. And so and now the H-1Bs, where you've got the people saying we need to get rid of the H-1Bs. We need to be hiring white Americans before we're hiring these people from India. Wait, isn't that you don't want the free market capitalism? You don't want to just let them. You want an affirmative action? Mm-hmm. Is that what you're asking for?
And then when Elon Musk is the one pulling all of the strings, he's like, actually, what I meant is I want everything that I like, everything that makes me richer. Yeah. That's what I meant. H-1B visas, thumbs up. Those are the good ones.
Yeah. So it's like you have that mindset in the church of these people who. The weird thing about fascism is it always idealizes it's big on nostalgia, which is generally just 30 years ago from wherever they are now. Mm-hmm. That's usually what it is. And it's always this like, things used to be so great. Yeah, when you were a kid, it was great because it was so fun. But that's not reality. And you can't make a whole political ideology based around nostalgia. And so that's kind of what it is. And they're all going back, thinking back in the church when like the church, we had Boy Scouts and it was so, and you had all those cute Mormon movies, and that was the peak. And now we're listening to black women speak at General Conference. Are you kidding me? I liked it when they were just quiet in the back of the pews and weren't saying anything. That's Mormonism to them, right? That version is dying. That version of the church is becoming a thing of the past, which proves that the what people like me are pushing works. Like it is actually working. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you think Ezra Taft Benson would have ever thought the prophet would be on camera hugging the president of the NAACP and having the church in the same week put updates in the app that says Jesus is not a white European and mixed race marriages are totally fine and we should be getting rid of racism? Do you think Ezra Taft Benson ever would have thought?
That's not the argument, though. The argument, though, is that should have happened way before, because these people claim to be prophets, seers, and revelators. That's what they say they are. And now this is like happening light years behind what they should actually be doing. Yes, that's the argument, though.
But that's a different argument. The way I see it.
It's the one that people care about the most. It's not about, is the church changing? Sorry. It's about... Okay. It's not about, is the church changing and keeping up with the times? It's, they told us they were prophets and they led us astray and they told us these racist things were from God. That's, yeah. So,
I think that's a different argument, though. And I think that's the argument that gets shouted over this one. That's the...
But your argument is that you're grateful that this change is happening. That like, can you imagine that it's happening? Because no one's saying like it shouldn't happen unless you're part of DezNat. I mean, but
no, they're not saying it shouldn't happen, but they're saying it doesn't. It seems like they're insinuating it doesn't matter that it's happening because it didn't happen soon enough. That's what it sounds like when I hear it of hey, we should celebrate this awesome thing right now in the face of Trumpism and Elon Muskism and that whole Groyper world.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that our church is actually stepping aside saying, no, here's where we stand.
Mm-hmm.
When for the first time in a while, you've got churches, you got people like Joel Webb and Christian leaders that are overtly pushing white supremacy right now. Our church is not standing with them. I think that is considerable.
But are they doing enough? Because part of you coming on this podcast and discussing this and you saying you're fighting on X with these people
in regard to DezNat, no, they're not doing enough.
To this, white nationalist type of Nazi Mormon movement, the church
putting out a little statement.
Enough.
Yeah, putting out a little statement is it's a dub, but obviously
from 2016.
This was like a few weeks ago. This is put out. So
the church put out a new statement.
Another one recently.
And what was that statement?
It was the one in the app where it says, do members of I think the gospel topic essays of blacks in the priesthood has been updated as well, where it says, no, we don't believe Jesus is a white European. No, we don't believe interracial marriage and mixing is wrong. No, we don't believe the kind of the silent beliefs that some members of the church that are DezNat adjacent have always believed. The church go out and said, no, we don't believe that.
And what has the reaction been?
For normal people, it's been, oh yeah, cool, yeah, duh. And for the crazies, it's been, how dare they betray us? Jesus wasn't a brown guy. Are you kidding me? They're literally calling it DEI Jesus. Like they're actually saying that, which is like, fine, if you want to sprint straight to hell, go ahead. But that's what a lot of these people are calling it. So I look at that and I'm like, look. Obviously, we'd like to go back and change history, but we can't. Right? We can't. What we can is affect the future, and we can see that is a win. That is a win. Like that is considerable, because in living in lifetime of your parents, when Ezra Taft Benson was prophet, that was unthinkable. That was never even. He was out there warning about the communists, saying that Martin Luther King was a secret communist trying to destroy America, right?
He was trying to run on a ticket with one of the biggest segregationists.
Was it Goldwater?
It was him or somebody else, I can't remember, but he was trying to run as the vice president. He also wrote the foreword to that one, Hammer one. Ezra Taft Benson has
the picture of like the black guy bleeding, like the crazy cover. You're like, oh, this is.
He was very overt with his racism.
Yeah, so like that. There were people that were kids when that was being taught at General Conference, just nonstop plan of, and even have like Glenn Beck, who's kind of like still kind of into that world of like the communists are coming, and how you define the communist or Marxist. It's an ambiguous, amorphous, almost trinity of we have no, like, just if it isn't a white Christian conservative, it's that, right? I mean, you've got people that were complaining about The Little Mermaid. They were mad that a mermaid in a CGI movie was played by a black girl. They're like, this is just this is white genocide. Meanwhile, I'm here going, hey, the real genocides, they're killing all the Palestinian children. No. The real genocide is the look at the mermaid movie. Great. Okay, we're both living in reality, I see. But yeah, so you are right. But I think it's a different argument in that they're saying, okay, the church isn't true. Look at the church did. This was racist. The prophet said they are seers talking to Jesus. They weren't talking to Jesus because we know they weren't, because look at the bigotry they were advocating. Look at the harm, the harm they put on brown and black members of the church. Okay, I'm saying, look at what we're changing to make sure people's lives are better in the church. And when this conversation happens, it's like the exMormons come in and shout it down with this. Like when I tweeted the NAACP thing and how awesome that was, and it's literally a picture of Amos C. Brown and Russell Nelson hugging, saying that they're good friends. Why are half the replies exMormons going, look what Brigham Young said about you? You're like, oh, okay. And then DezNat's commenting the same thing. Like, is there not room for like a black guy in the church to be like, hey, I'm happy the church is progressing on this? Like, why is it that both the DezNats and the exMos are coming with the same screenshots?
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I just think that's not my brand of exMormonism. Like, I was thinking a couple of weeks ago, I saw a Salt Lake Tribune article on Instagram that said how the church now is going to be requiring like background checks for people who work with kids and so forth. And there's been different like incremental changes that have come on that front. And obviously, as somebody who worked at Mormon Stories, talking to people at length who have been abused within the church, I know that's a systemic issue. And then anything that is going to help that from a systemic point of view is something that I applaud. And I remember looking at that and, I was like, yeah, maybe I'll repost it. Maybe I won't. And then I looked at the comments and there's 100 comments. 100 of them were from exMormons. And I kind of go through this thought process where I'm like, I understand where they're coming from. This is not what I would say, but most of the comments were like, too late, like too much harm has happened. Like, I'm like a better late than never, but I think we have to balance the real anger that people are feeling because they know how much the church has said that they, they're for children. They work on behalf of Jesus Christ while also obviously covering up for the church on the other hand. And so they're angry with the contradictions that they've seen, whether race-wise or abuse-wise. So it's just, it comes from an internal anger of the contradictions of, you said you were for Christ, you didn't help the kids that I know as from a systemic level. You're a corporation. That's kind of how I feel the church is, that as a corporation, just like any other business, you are into self-preservation for yourself while people are getting mowed down of different, marginalized communities or children, what have you. And so when the church does make some kind of progress and they put better policies in place or whatever, there still is going to be a reaction, whether it's garments, whatever, to be like, hey, well, now I'm feeling gaslit because you're not acknowledging that you said this would never change. You're not acknowledging that like real harm has been done under the system. You're just moving on like nothing has changed. And so, there's quotes from Elder Oaks that come to mind where he's like, we don't seek apologies or give them. And that's the kind of cold-hearted church that a lot of us are familiar with, is like, you guys are supposed to represent Jesus Christ, but you act like, total dicks.
Yeah, or the when Oaks is like, to the young women of the church, know that when you dress immodestly, you are becoming pornography. Remember that quote?
Yeah, and that's where I'm like, were they pornography when their shoulders were showing? And now if you're allowed to show your shoulders with the new garments, are you still pornography? That's what I would ask him.
So I hear what you're saying. This is kind of like on Jubilee when they asked, is it good for the church to change, for doctrine to change? And I was saying, yeah. And all the exMormons were basically saying no. And I'm like, well, what do you want? I think, like, yes, you have to give room for people to express and be upset, but also you have to ask, okay, so what is the ultimate goal, like, point of what you're saying? Like, okay, now you can have, if someone's trying to repent and now there's no more one-on-one word in this interviews, the parents in there. Okay, you're saying not good enough. Well, what do you want? If you're just saying, well, ultimately, I just want the church not to exist. It's like, well, sorry, that's not how the world works. Like, you can't advocate for how you wish it would be in like the perfect scenario where you're God, you create everything. You've got to deal with reality. And sometimes I feel like whenever the church does change for the better, like that, I'm not saying exMormons need to be posting, oh, this is great. But if you're only saying, oh, well, not good enough, well, there isn't a good enough. Like, what are you just here to moan? And if you are just here to moan, that's fine. But you should maybe like preface that, like, I'm just here to say I hate it. Like, okay, cool. Well, I mean, there are those people, but I that's where I'm always kind of like, I don't know what some of them want. Like, if you're just upset about it always, well, can't really help you there. There's no point of even listening to me. Like, you're fine. You're just pissed. But it's kind of the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
There's not.
And let me put it this way too, that there's a shelf breaking thing. There's a crossover. There's ambiguity, and there's some PMOs, right? People are mentally in, physically out, or physically in, mentally out. I mean, but in my
that's
mind,
what that means.
You didn't know that?
I did not know.
You didn't know PMO
I would
means?
see PMO, and I'm like, I thought it was an inside joke.
You're lying. You have to know what PMO means.
No, I would see PIMO, and I'm like, I don't.
It means
you guys have a lot of jargon.
See, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I'm just one person. I am just you guys. I don't know. But the point is like, in my mind, it's like there's people who are in the church, there's Mormons, and then there's the exMormons. And then through this progression, let's call it like, the plan of salvation, you know, you go down your little thing when you cross over the veil, when your shelf breaks and now you're an exMormon, that early stage right there, you're in your anger stage. For most people, there's some people who they just leave. They never care to look into, you know, any reasons that other people leave. They're just like, this doesn't work for me. That's what I feel like a lot of people on the Mormon apologetic side wishes people would do, and not go into the space where I am, where it's like, oh, we were lied to and this is systemically all this harm has been done, right? So there is that really intense section of just an anger phase of any kind of major life change that's going to happen. Right. You know, first you're like in denial, and then you're finally all the way to acceptance. And so, you know, I've been in the anger stage, even when I denied that I was in the anger stage. People, they don't know what stage they're kind of in until they can reflect and look back at it. And so I, as a content creator, have tried to just give people their space to be in the anger stage, because there's not really much you can do about it. And that's what my advice would be like to everybody who's looking at this paradigm of the Mormon, exMormon universe, what's going on, is there's type of content that other content creators make that I wouldn't make that, because even if they are not in an anger stage themselves, it's content for people in an anger stage. And so I would never repost something from, like, let's say the church NAACP, or the church making progress with systemic change around children's rights and stuff. I wouldn't repost that and say, like, not good enough, this sucks, because that's not my personality and that's not the stage that I'm in. And that's also not the people I want to attract. That's not the message I want to put out there. But I give 100% understanding of people when they're in that stage and they're like, this wasn't good enough, because it's just, you're looking at one individual on the internet or across the internet one time at one stage, but it's not their entire story. You know what I mean? So while I think from your perspective, you could say exMormons are very angry and they have all these things, I'm like, you are thinking of a collective amount of exMormons at their times of different anger stages, but we all move through it. There's, let's say, millions of us, hypothetically, and we all go through different stages and iterations of what we cling onto, what we need to express, and to just be like judged and looked at that, like, we don't want progress in the church as a collective. I don't think that's true. I think John Dolan's been doing this for over 20 years, and he's even more nuanced. I am surprised how nuanced John is. And he works harder. He does this kind of job 1,000 times stronger than I do. And he's extremely laid back at, like, just like, we want to make progress. We want people to you know, work on what's good for them and make the decisions with informed consent. He is in no way, shape, or form like that. I want to tear the church down and make it look as bad as possible. Like, as a person, he's not like that. And to me, he's not a content creator like that, even though that's what I think people would look at him as. So that makes sense. I think we get judged as a collective as that we don't want the church to progress, but it just, you might be hitting on a nerve at that one person that one day, but that's not the full story. What do you think?
I'm gonna say okay. I don't know if I agree 50%, but I'll just say okay. No, I see where you're coming from. I've seen a lot where
I would say most people don't stay like that. Is my TLDR. Most people don't stay in that stage. I think there are a lot of exMormons where that is like the exMormon community is like their crutch, the content creators, the parasocial relationships. I think that's true in a lot of different communities. And so people stay in the anger stage longer, and people are more prone to just not really care or champion or celebrate things because that's part of their personality. But I just don't think that's the majority.
When we touched on that in the last podcast, it kind of led into me saying why I say I'm a Mormon first and LDS second. Mm-hmm. And there was a ton of comments on the live chat of like, that's ridiculous. Like, people were saying, no, Mormonism is the LDS church. You can't do that. That was like a real comment I kept getting, mm-hmm. which to me is bonkers.
And I understand where you're coming from completely.
Like, there are different Mormon denominations.
I come from a very bonkers Mormon family in and of itself that doesn't follow all the LDS rules and stuff. And so, yeah,
even just sociologically speaking, like, the Bickertonites are real. The Snufferites are real. The Community of Christ is real. Even the weird ones, the FLDS, the Apostolic United Brethren, like, those are Mormons that are not LDS. So, like, just at a factual level, Mormon and LDS are not the same. Just speaking facts. So that means there is Mormonism that exists outside of this institution. So I've always said, like, well, okay, I won't say I've always said, but past couple years vocally, I've said, look, I believe finding your identity as a Mormon first, and what you believe as a Mormon, and whatever institution you choose to go to, you know, what building you choose to sit down in on Sunday and talk with people, that's your prerogative. But you can be a Mormon first. And then what does that mean? Every single person has their own spirituality, their own connection, and they see things their own way. And I do feel like sometimes the ex-Mormon community doesn't allow for that to be a thing for the Mormons, you know? And so like someone saying, here's what I believe. And they go, well, your church doesn't teach that. Like, so like, why can't that person just believe what they believe?
I'll tell you why. Do you want to know the answer why? Are you asking genuinely? This is what I think why ex-Mormons push back on that talking point.
Yes, I'd love it. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Give me that talking point of what does an ex-Mormon say again?
Oh, well, no, there is
Give me another example.
Being LDS and Mormon. Like,
so when you're saying
your
you argument
can be Mormon
is
first
that,
and LDS second, they're saying that's not a thing.
Yeah, it's because from so many, I think, ex-Mormons' perspectives, the ways in which I'm going to say you, for example, or other people who have more of an apologetics bent, where you want to defend the church, you want to see it in a different light than we want to see it in. We see it in as a dead on arrival, kind of. It's not a true thing. And when you would push back on something that would say that there's more nuance than we believe that there is, it still falls under the umbrella of like an apologetic type of argument, that there's more love, there's more openness, there's more acceptance within the church than we deem as appropriate to give it. Because from our perspective, the ways in which you're kind of massaging the edges is not our experience, and it's not systemically what we view the church as. We view it as an evil corporation, and you're saying there's more nuance, there's more ability to be accepted with these viewpoints. Either from our own lived experience, I think we can push back and say, that's not how I was treated when I would never be able to have that opinion. And that kind of goes into the garment thing. The garment thing of the new garments coming out, I haven't had an opinion on it because there's not really a right way to look at it. You're frustrated that you were not able to show your shoulders, and you also feel gaslit that other people like are saying that, you know, this is, God said it would never change, when we were like, oh, we were taught that the garments were never supposed to change. You know, we lived our life around one set of rules, and then other people are telling us nobody told you that you had to live it around those rules. So that's the pushback is Mormonism is experienced a lot differently than somebody like you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I know that argument, and I'm trying to be as nice as I can when I say this, but like, I still don't get that argument. Like, I still don't understand. Like, it sounds like, oh yeah, you're gonna hate this. You know, when it, like, there's some TikTok and it's like some Alabama dad who's mad that his son is taking a Mexican girl to prom. It's like, well, when I was young, it wasn't like that. It's like, so, like they didn't stop building trains because it made the carriage builders upset. Like, I don't like, okay, that wasn't how it was when you were doing it, but it is how it is now. So the people that have it now shouldn't be allowed to do it or be happy about it because it wasn't that way when you were. That's just how like boomers sound. Like, I
think we're speaking past each other. I think you're going to have an example, because I'm on board with what you're saying in that example. And I think the best example that's most relevant to of the ways that people get angry when things change for the better is when there's like student loan forgiveness, and people are like, left and right are like, you can't forgive student loans because I had to pay mine off. And it's like, don't you want everyone to not have to go through that and that everyone could get their student loans forgiven? Yeah, I would be of that opinion. So I think in the Mormon ex-Mormon, you'd have to give me kind of a different example of what you mean by like things were not the ways that they are.
Like now. the garments. Like, now look, like when the garment whole thing was like, well, the garments are now, you know, now they're less intense than they were before. People are upset. That wasn't how it was when they were growing up. Okay. What is your point with that? Is it just to express that you're annoyed? Then that's fine. But when you're like directing that at some 19-year-old girl on TikTok that's like, look at how cute I can dress now with my garments, and the comments is some 50-year-old dad like, you're in a brainwashed cult. It wasn't that way when I was younger. You should be ashamed of yourself. It's like, F off. Mm-hmm. Like, really? Is this really how you're taking it out? Like I don't care that it wasn't that way when you were younger. Like, you can care, but that doesn't have to be my problem. Just like I don't care that you couldn't go to prom with Mexicans when you were younger. Doesn't mean my neighbor has to fall. Like why is your anger from how it was back then now directed at me, and I should be ridiculed because of how it was back then? I don't get that. I don't know the
discourse around garments that much, or I can't say like what the arguments would be, and I can't like get inside a Mormon or ex-Mormon's head to explain it. But I do think it just, what I'm trying to relate to you with all of these different examples is just like thinking inside the head of an ex-Mormon who just feels in an anger stage that they have been lied to and that they built their life around things that turned out to not be true. They had made choices that they wouldn't have made otherwise. And I am the nuance through and through. So I have been married for 16 years. I would never have gotten married, but also I am so happy with my life because I think life is a journey. And so I don't make the type of ex-Mormon content other people would say, because I'm like, everything's a journey. And
ex-Mormon content has changed significantly through the past few years. Like, it's cool. Like there's some interesting stuff that's being spoken about. And before it was kind of just like you can only watch Sandra Tanner upset so many times before it's like, look at, I can't. I
want to view things as a journey and help people understand that life moves on after you've realized that that was a lie, and then what are we doing to rebuild?
I guess I understand the anger stage. I maybe I should be more clear. Where I get annoyed is when that anger stage is targeted at certain people, and now what do you want me to do? Like, here's another me and picture me and my ex-girlfriend, and she was white, was put on ex-Mormon Reddit. Okay. And the comments were literally about how like all the Bruce R. McConkie, Brigham Young quotes on like race mixing. I'm like, wait. I shouldn't be in a happy relationship because your grandparents taught that was wrong. So you're directing that at me.
It's people. Like, this is different than the anger thing. What I think people are trying to get at there is, like I said a few minutes ago, maybe an hour ago now, about how they view you as somebody who, as a whole, is an extremely staunch LDS person who would believe that there's an unbroken chain of prophetic authority from Joseph Smith all the way to Russell M. Nelson today. That's how I would have viewed you until we had these conversations. So you came on last time. That's what I would have viewed you as. I had no reason to think of you as anything other than just your average, like, Trump supporting Provo, Utah, BYU bro who's doing apologetics, who happens to like be on Ward Radio with your other compatriots there. Like, nobody would understand that you have a difference of opinion. And so they see you as a hypocrite who is kind of like upholding the church and doing apologetics while also living, contrary to what the prophets you uphold as prophets would tell you to do with your life. So that's what they would say, because they don't know your opinions.
So it becomes a sin of assumption, is basically like, well, I've assumed this, therefore my anger is directed, which I can see that. And I think that's the...
So you can see that. We can acknowledge that. So now It's not a mystery.
Well, it's not a mystery. No, not a mystery. I still think it's wrong. And I think wrong. Like the Mormon apologetics has a lot to clean up as well. But like, I do think that is kind of like it isn't normal to direct your anger at someone you don't know because of a life choice and then like make them the target because of your past trauma, even though you don't know them. To me, that's not normal. And that shouldn't be normalized, but it kind of is.
And as an ex-Mormon content creator, people don't know me either. And they make assumptions about me too. And they are, imagine my opposite version of that, of somebody who they believe in this church that they are, as DezNat would be, faithful, righteous warriors to shit all over me as much as they want to possibly do that and make assumptions about me. Right. And they feel like they're backed by the Lord on their side. So there's sins of assumptions on all fronts.
Those people hate us. Like, remember, the same people that hate you, they also hate me, which is also this weird thing. And like, sometimes we kind of do have the same like enemy in a sense. But I believe in the Book of Mormon, you don't. But they feel the exact same way about us, that we're both evil apostates who should be bowie knifed. So like, I don't know what to do with that information other than at some point the religion conversation does mold into the political conversation, and you can't just separate them. Like, at some point we have to recognize what Trumpism has done in our church and how there's now kind of a right-wing apostasy in the church where it's like Russell Nelson is a woke globalist leader, and the church is trying to, you know, so I mean, we've talked forever, but that was, I think, the last thing we'd ever talked about, how ex-Mormons haven't touched, like if I was an anti-Mormon podcaster through and through, and my goal was to destroy the church, okay? And I knew there was a Nazi movement going, and I'm like, this mommy blogger got a boob job. Let's talk about that. Like, hey. They're doing this. They're doing the Heil Hitler sign. Hey. And that's been, I'm kind of like, I've never ever cheered for, like, I've never been like, hey, ex-Mormons, take down this. Like I've never been in the position where I've been waiting for the ex-Mormons to dog on a part of the church. And I'm like, the one time I'm like, hey, you guys should do this. It's just zip.
Can we say it because we fear for our lives, because they are, you know, threatening people with bowie knives and stuff? Can we use that excuse? Because that's what my go-to is I don't want to F around with people who are. So
you're saying this is what Mike Norton was really made for. This is what he should have been. We should have kept him in, like, look, guys, we've got Mike back there.
Yeah.
Who's Mike? And we open the cage. Oh, that's Mike. Maybe he should have been
unleashed.
Maybe that's when he should have come out. But,
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you think it's mostly like they don't want to poke the bear kind of a thing. Where...
There's that, or the reason that it takes the, what's the word? The barrier to entry, like the amount of education that you kind of have to give people on Mormonism to a wider audience to help people, like, explain why this movement is dangerous and what it is and where it came from. There's
a lot of background work you've got to do, which makes it complicated. And okay, I can see that.
And I have been the target of people when I was, like, on Twitter. I know what it's like, whether when I was Mormon or ex-Mormon. The reason why I got my name Nuance Ho, fun fact, is the day that I announced to my Mormon conservative, heavily DezNat Twitter audience in 2019, when I announced to them that I'm leaving the church, and they all shunned me, and, like, it was horrible. That same day, I went on exMormon Reddit, and I needed an exMormon Reddit name, and I chose Nuance Ho after Nuance Bro, who's a content creator. But I chose the name Nuance Ho on Reddit, and then my first day on Reddit, I found that the entire exMormon community on Reddit was trying to shut down some events for my conservative nonprofit that I was putting on all throughout Utah that I'd spent months planning. And I was like, these freaking ex-Mormons are also in a cult too. And I felt completely alone, that I couldn't be in the conservative Mormon sphere anymore. And the first day I go on exMormon Reddit, everyone, they didn't know it was me or anything, but I was like, now I couldn't even be on exMormon Reddit. They were trying to shut down these events that I was doing, kind of rightly so. It was kind of not very good stuff that I agree with anymore. But point is, So point is, I know what it's like to be under attack from ex-Mormons and from Mormons. And I just think it's not everybody has the spoons. Not everybody wants to be in that fight because they're just visceral, disgusting people that make you so sad that humanity has taken this dark turn. And the less I think about it, the happier I am. And I would rather prance around life not acknowledging that they exist.
Well, I'm on the way out from anything Mormon media anyway, right? So, like, you know, like I
just like
I've made it pretty clear, like,
burn.
Guys, I've said all I can say. Here's where I stand on this. I'm not the prophet. I'm like, there's only so much you can do and say, right? But I think, you know, people. I just wish the exmo community I just wish whenever they did go against DezNat, they actually did a lot of good. They exposed who some of these people were. It's like, man, They got eugenics conferences now. Where are you? Like, hey, where are you guys? Jordan and McKay. Where anybody? They're doing the Nazi conferences to make baby. Is anybody? No. Is it just me who's weirded out? But so I'm like, man, I really wish. Like, I don't care about Lexi Watts and the Running Girls. Why do I care about that? I care about the Nazis, and no one's paying. So, but again, if it is like I don't want to touch these people because I'm freaked out. It's kind of like Russia to me, where like, hey, look, I know a lot of Americans are like, I don't want to be funding Ukraine and giving Ukraine weapons to fight Russia. Well, if we don't, we're going to have to fight Russia.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, if we don't take care of the Nazis now, what happens in Elders Quorum where someone's like the 14-year-old boy in American Fork from a totally normal family has gotten the Mormon version of Andrew Tated, where he's believing this stuff, and you've got the parents like, what do we do? This isn't normal. Like, you've got to stop it. And unfortunately, the Mormon podcasts aren't doing it. Like, I love...
We're NATO right now, basically.
NATO?
NATO. I said we're NATO right now.
Yes, we are NATO. Yeah. I love so many of those guys behind the mics. I think so many of those channels are... I'm great friends with them. They're great people. Very few are willing to touch this subject because it means they have to confront uncomfortable truths about Brigham Young that they don't want to say. It means they have to confront uncomfortable truths about church history that they don't want to acknowledge or they wanted to put in a more positive light. And it means a level of deconstruction that people aren't comfortable with and that their audience isn't comfortable with. So not there, right? Where I'm saying, bro, you got it. Brigham Young taught you should murder interracial couples. He taught that, and he said it was God's law. He believed that God wanted you to murder that's not a product of the time. John Adams predates Brigham. He was a founding father who said slavery is wrong and this stuff is wrong. Most people were not homicidal in their racism the way Brigham Young was. We've got to talk about that, how that has influenced this movement, because now you got a dude who was working at Booz Hamilton and the Assistant Attorney General of Alaska that are pushing this. We should talk about it. The Mormon podcasts don't want to. That breaks my heart a little bit. It does make me upset that for the most part, they're not willing to confront it in the same way they're willing to go to bat over it when a BOU professor wears a rainbow pin. They'll do 9,000 podcasts on the woke professors. And they're like, hey, the Nazis are at the door. No, nothing. Okay. So I kind of wish the exMormons, but fine. Maybe it's okay. Maybe no one will. This podcast is kind of
I think that's
but.
Interesting that you said that their audience isn't willing to go down that type of path, because it can lead to a certain type of deconstruction.
Right.
That you have to have a more nuanced perspective that I think you have, that's really unique in terms of Latter-day Saints, that the average listener to Mormon podcasts isn't able to have that type of nuanced, like moldable thinking, that you can still believe in the church, belong to the church like you do, but call Joseph Smith out on, or call Brigham Young out on that. And if we're talking about like the roots and the systems that go back to that, again, that's a problem, right? That's a problem that the Mormon church, from the top all the way down to the content creators who are talking to Mormon audiences, is that not a problem, though, that there is a Nazi movement coming up that takes root in the ideals and the doctrines of the church itself? If that's rising up and Mormon podcasters aren't willing to touch it because of the waters they swim in of a church that is already so inflexible, that tells me that the church is too authoritarian and too dogmatic to be able to change in the ways that you were just saying that you want it to change over time, that the change is going to be so slow because the very system is not bendable.
Can I tell you what? Well, I actually think it's because of funding. A lot of the podcasts get independent funding from wealthy members of the church. And so in the same way where you've got like a news station that wants to cover a story, but it makes whatever CEO that gives $6 million a year to that news company, it's like, you better not. It's kind of that thing where a lot of the people who are giving money to these programs just want to see happy, uplifting stuff. It's like some 70-year-old dude who's a multimillionaire whose granddaughter went inactive and it broke his heart. So he sees the podcast. He's like, oh, this is great. Here's 100,000. Keep doing what you're doing. Make it positive and happy. Like, that's kind of how it works, a lot of it. There's this idea that the LDS church is the one funding all these podcasts, which like, that's just not true. Like, I've been accused of that.
Have they ever? Farms?
that
Dun,
that was
dun, dun.
that was way before my time. But I like when I was even doing more stuff, people were always like, Kwaku's getting paid by the church. I was not getting paid by the LDS church. Like that didn't happen. Like when I was on Saints Unscripted for the first year, we got paid in gift cards. Mm-hmm. I'm not kidding. I got a $10 Smith's gift card each time I did a podcast. So let's get that clear. But
$100 billion organization, sure could.
True. There were some pennies. There were some pennies in this church, but there is that's the ultimate reason. It's like, look, the audience isn't going to be okay with that because a lot of the podcasters view talking about that as giving the ex-Mormon podcasters a win, like discussing on their terms, which it shouldn't be. But unfortunately, that's how a lot of them view it, where it's like, hey, this is our history.
It's not a zero-sum game. That's obnoxious.
Right,
and I would hate that.
Be.
I'm glad we're having this conversation right now because that's obnoxious. Because it's not a zero-sum game. If it makes more people join your church or have a favorable experience, so less people are leaving your church because you're discussing the real problems within it, that's a win for everybody. And just because, like, pissy ex-Mormons get a win too, like, is a broken clock not right twice a day? Like,
right. Well, it's also unavoidable, right? It's the young people are leaving the church in droves. That's the facts, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, we're converting more members, but wards are shrinking, and they're having to reorganize stakes like every week now because of because of us. So the reality's there, right? We know what's happening. The reality's there, and so you can't, like, if you're a member of the church, you're gonna end up reading these Brigham Young quotes. So my thought is someone who wants people to retain faith in their restored gospel, if it's their thing. If it's not your thing, it's not your thing, right? That's the other thing. It's like, I do believe all paths lead back to God. So, well, most paths lead back to God.
Not you, Hitler.
Yeah, no, not that stuff. But like, do I think, like, I've spent a lot of time with Hare Krishnas. I think it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. I think most paths lead back to God. So if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But for people who this is their thing, this is their culture, it is their family line, and they're like, it's part of my tribe. I want to believe in this, but I don't like what I'm seeing here. And then none of the podcasts I'm subscribed to are really talking about it. Or if they do, they're talking about it in a way that's like not real. But the issue is if they're presenting to be serious, but not covering it fair.
Yeah.
And that's, by the way, something that, like, with a lot of the stuff I've done was comedy, and it was purposeful comedy, right? So I do think sometimes people would be like, well, you're an apologist. How come you haven't, like you mean this is the show we were wearing costumes? We were like, it was humor. Like there is a difference between me and, like, actually, I shouldn't say any name of any professor because I don't want to get in any trouble. I don't want to cause any beef. But like, when your thing is, I am the serious podcast. I'm a BYU professor. This is my podcast. We're talking about the serious subjects. Hey, what about everything Brigham Young said, from Brigham Young to Ezra Taft Benson on race? Can we talk about that? No. Okay, well, the only one who is talking about is going to be Mormon Stories and John Dolan. So you want him to have the corner on this subject? Mm-hmm. Let's just talk about how awesome it is that the church gave this much money to Africa. Like, no, that is great. That is absolutely great. Okay, like, I'm not saying that's not great. Don't believe I'm discounting that. But if we have these attitudes in the church in which we have a Nazi movement growing from, and we're refusing to really talk about it with the credence it deserves, then you're just telling people to leave. We don't deserve to have any members. Like we deserve everything that's going to come to us if we don't have the cojones to own this situation. And because then we have to have the conversation of, well, why did Brigham teach what he taught? Why did he say these things? And was he interpreting things different from Joseph? Well, no, we can't have that conversation because that gives the Snufferites a dub. So it's like, okay, are we that obsessed with hedge trimming and jersey measuring where we're going to sacrifice, like, something that's so damn important? And that's what frustrates me as someone who's been in the scene for a long time, and why I'm freaking piecing out, because I'm like screaming at the top of my lungs, like, guys, we've got to tackle the reality, and we can't just be so worried about if it gives a point to another group. Denver Snuffer, like, I've had legitimate people tell me, well, if we talk about the differences between Joseph and Brigham, that's like what Denver Snuffer wants. So it doesn't mean like my favorite sweet treat is banana bread. I love banana bread. Bro, like nice moist banana bread with chocolate chips in it makes my day. If Jeffrey Epstein also likes banana bread, it doesn't mean I can't also enjoy banana bread.
Gonna say, if he baked me some banana bread, I would eat it.
I wouldn't eat that one. If it was Diddy, he baked it. I especially would not eat the Diddy, but there's he was doing. But yeah. So like, I want to be able to have that conversation, and I want to be able to have it openly, and we need to be able to ask, hey, why did. Like, we know what Joseph said. We know Joseph said, if I had anything to do with a Negro, I'd confine him to his own species. But we know by the end of his life, in 1843 and 44, he was saying, break off the shackles of the black man and treat him like everybody else. We know that he was an emancipationist, not an abolitionist. We know he was an emancipationist in his presidential platform. We know those things. We know that we can see an actual change in the way Joseph Smith viewed slavery, to the point where at the end of his life, hate him for all those other things if you want to, but there was a significant change here. And we know Brigham thought the exact opposite. And we know that Brigham waited till Joseph was dead before he started vocalizing what he really believed. We know that. Can we talk about that change? And we can talk about how when Brigham Young said you should kill interracial couples, we know, I don't know if the timeline matches up here exactly, but we do know that one black man was murdered by Temple Square by a mob. We do know that. We know he was brutally murdered because of who he was associating with romantically. That's a part of our church history. We also know that Jane Manning James was sealed to Joseph Smith as a sister. And we know that Brigham Young had her then resealed as a slave in heaven. Brigham created a whole new doctrine of slaves in heaven, right? So you got to say, hey, I know we say Brigham was a prophet, but what does prophet mean? Because if you're saying prophet just means leader, okay, you sustain him as a leader. Well, that's like sustaining water as H2O. Like, all right, well, okay. But if you're saying you believe Brigham was getting inspiration from God, do you think God wanted Jane Manning to be a slave in heaven? Do you think God wanted us to kill interracial couples? Do you think God wanted those things? You don't believe that unless you're a sociopath. So if you don't believe God wanted those things, what do you mean? And why are you saying Brigham was a prophet here? Are you saying it's just about keys and authority? Are we that authority based? Is there no room for the Mormon philosophy to breathe on its own? Because that's where I'm saying Mormonism wins as a philosophy first. We don't win as an authority first. We cannot win that game. We've got too much wacky stuff. Remember when Marky Peterson was at the BYU devotional where he was like, oh, brothers and sisters, I think every Negro should own a Cadillac. And you're like, wait, what? Like, just stay away from my daughters. Like that's kind of okay. Like, okay, hey, Mark, aged poorly, whatever. Like, if he had priesthood authority. We don't win as authority first, but we can survive beautifully as a philosophy first if we're taking that OG original, I would say even pre-Nauvoo Mormonism, going from there, like what William Bickerton did. The founder of the Bickertonites, that other Mormon church in the Northeast that's actually growing right now. That's what he did. He said, we're 1830. We're Book of Mormon. We're 12 apostles. That's it. We're not garments. We're not Doctrine and Covenants. We're nothing else after that. Do they believe Joseph fell as a prophet? Some of them do. And you say, well, that's interesting. So you retain the original beliefs of the Restoration while believing Joseph fell, and they go, yeah, and we believe that the true doctrine of Christ is taught here, and that's where we go from. So it is possible. You actually can be devout and faithful with different levels here. Let's have that convo. No, we can't. That's all authority. I don't want to jeopardize my funding. It's like, great, we've become the legacy news. You know what I mean? Like,
that's funny.
And maybe this just end up being just generational moping and whining at this point, but I don't want to just whine on your show. But sorry, that's where I'm coming from here. And I hope that makes sense. But I'm going to get torched. I'm going to get freaking torched.
Oh, man.
No, let it in. Who cares? Let it in.
Wow.
Let it in. Let it in.
Let the funding to this program go forth.
I want to preface. I'm not saying like the church, those LDS podcasts, I'm not saying they're doing a bad job. I'm saying though on this subject specifically, it's like no one's talking about it, and they recognize how, you know, the old sketch where the woman has like a nail in her head. It's like, I just have a headache. And the therapist is like, wow. Maybe it's the nail in your head. Like she's talking all around the nail. It's kind of like that. So on that subject with this whole thing, I do become a nuanced bro, because like I say, I love the OG Joseph Smith stuff. I see an obvious difference between him and Brigham Young, and Brigham Young created a big legacy in our church that's caused an incredible amount of harm. It has. You can't justify a lot of the stuff. It's impossible to. And if you try, you look like a sociopath. So what do you do there? And I mean, that's kind of, I guess, the end of my rant. I don't know. I mean, I know what your answer is. It's Kwaku, peace out, leave the church. You know, it's all, but that's not.
I am a nuance hoe, and I think all paths and journeys that people go on are unique, and I don't know what's right for anyone else because I have not walked in their shoes. That's my opinion on stuff.
Very open-minded.
So
very good
that's what sucks about being in the exMormon space is that's not a very popular, like, you know, title for a YouTube video is like,
right.
It's a not true thing to me, but I understand the nuances and I understand the benefits and the frameworks that all different types of religions provide. There's pros and cons. And yeah.
For me, like Halloween, last Halloween, my mom passed away, right? And that was like my belief in God that helped me so much then. That was really the only thing I had. So like there's also then the emotional part of like sometimes when you do like bring up some of those sticky subjects in church history, people where the faith has helped them throughout such a traumatic time, they can be like, well, why are you trying to take away the one thing that's brought me peace? You know? So I don't know, maybe this whole thing's unwinnable and we've all chosen the wrong internet footprint and I'm gonna, you know, time to just rebrand and move away. Maybe that's just the answer. I don't know.
I totally know what you mean. That's really funny that you said that too. So if you want to wrap up the podcast, I think what you're trying to say is Nazis bad. All right, I'm cutting that out.
Do you think I can organize like dialogues between you and some of the church podcasters? Like just healthy, real dialogues?
The only reason I would say no is because I know most of them are so conservative, and I think I'm able to talk to you because I think you understand things from more of like a left systems perspective and you have progressive views on things. And I think they're just a lot more staunch in, like you shouldn't be gay. And if you are, you should go to conversion therapy because being gay is unnatural and God's plan is this one way. I think they're a lot more dogmatic in ways that I'm just like, there's nothing I can do with that.
I've been pointing people to Brandon Robertson. I know we got to go. Last thing I'll say, I'm pointing people to Brandon Robertson on that subject. He's an evangelical pastor, but he's making really strong scriptural arguments that gay marriage isn't condemned at all by Jesus. And his arguments are really good. They're really strong.
I'm happy for you to do that.
They're really
I'm
strong.
I
gave him a shout out. I hope he watches this. He's a fun guy.
All right. Well,
that's it.
Yeah. If people want to follow you, where do they look you up?
Don't follow me. It's really my Instagram story is really just me at the gym. You don't need to follow me. I have nothing to plug right now. I can't wait to talk. It's okay.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not that interesting.
As opposed to plugging something specifically, but just this is something that you're passionate about talking about on Twitter
this
now and then.
Is if you see DezNat stuff, combat it. That's all I'm here to say. It's going to help a lot of people. That's all. Don't need to follow me.
And that's the call to action that we can live with. Don't follow Kwaku. You'll never once hear Carah say follow Kwaku anywhere. But if you do, I follow you on Twitter. And I think we agree on a lot of the same political things. I went through a couple days ago and looked at everything that you liked. And I was like, and also true. Yes. Okay. Palestine. Thumbs up. Elon. We have a lot of the same opinions politically.
Well, it's also hard not to anymore. It's kind of like, look, things have gotten so bad where it's kind of like, hey, we throwing people in gulags. Bad, right? Is this like...
Yeah. And if there's anyone in my audience who's like, Carah, I didn't know you were going to get so political. Yeah, things have gone that bad. We're going to get political on my channel. So if you see anything on Twitter, please combat it if you have the energy to do so. If you have the energy to hit the subscribe button below, if you haven't already, go ahead and do that. Please hit a thumbs up. Hitting the bell for notifications so you know when each new video drops would also be fantastic. I have a Patreon. My Hotown Patreon is also linked below. It's a great way to support the show and the new content I'll be having coming out in the future. You can listen to this podcast anywhere where you listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple, under the Mormon History Hoedown. And any donations you want to link or any donations you want to give, I have a Venmo and a 501c3 nonprofit called the Nuance Hug Foundation. Anything to my donor box link is also tax deductible in the United States. So that is my entire show for today. We will be back making regular podcasts as soon as I can move out of this beautiful studio. This is like one of my last episodes in the studio.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I'll have to go find a new studio to record in, and then I'll be back up in action doing more cool stuff. So thanks, Kwaku, for joining me for this great discussion. Glad we made it happen. You're not so bad after all.
I'm pretty normal. I just troll a lot. Once you get past the troll, I'm pretty normal.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a podcast. All right. Bye.